And we're going to go ahead and get back into it. 3.5, Governance Handbook Check-in, Board of Trustees. We check in on it every year, and
Twice.
yeah, twice a year,
If
thank
not-
you.
It's actually, I think that we check on board goals quarterly, and the handbook we do it twice a year.
So here's we are.
We're not making revisions, we're checking in. Revisions are in January.
So I trust we've all been able to read this one. You know, not much has changed from obviously the last time. Actually, nothing's changed since the last time that we.
I think we kept the same one.
Yeah, I think we did keep the same. One.
There was an update as indicated on the bottom, January 2020.
Right, that was the last update. And since then, this is our first revisit, I think. I think generally speaking, there will be things that we do have to probably edit or incorporate into this, and you know, when it comes to our next time around, as we start filling the picture of a portrait of a graduate, as we start putting together our mission statement, this will probably need a revisit as well, for when that time comes.
This one, just making sure none of that really goes in this. This is about your role and responsibility and behavior, expectations, that kind of stuff. So like, yeah, you wanna be careful not pollinating your handbook because it is.
I would agree,
Okay.
but we do have, you know, under our unity of purpose, building a governance team, unity of purpose, we do have a whole thing that talks about we are committed to perpetuate high student achievement by, and then we list specific things.
So
We
then,
need to be able to probably revise that to revert back to or fall back on these things that we are creating, such as a portrait of a graduate, as opposed to listing our own things here. We should rely on, that's page, let's see, it's building a governance team, unity of purpose.
right,
So that's right after our roles and responsibilities. That's where we start talking about that, and that was exactly my point, is we should probably take out a lot of that cross-pollination and instead refer to existing documents as we build them, instead of making our own. You know, it says that we are going to develop curriculum assessments and instructional materials. Well, that's not the board's purpose.
well,
Our
we
board's
do,
purpose
we
is
do
to
it,
adopt it, and
we do it through board policy.
correct.
So, and we do it through our actions of approving different things, like when textbooks come to us for approving, so we are. But I agree, it's misleading saying that we're developing curriculum. Maybe
Correct.
changing that word, that we monitor,
Mhm.
cause our job is monitoring.
And
the-
setting direction.
And, right, it's not developing.
So, a lot of this, like, you know, we could keep a lot of this, of course, but I'm just saying that as we start saying that whatever our new district statement is, we need to make sure that obviously our governance standards, anytime that we mention something not strictly related to governance in this handbook, should be either removed or referring to existing materials.
But broad.
I would advocate broader. Yeah.
Okay, just making sure.
Or in this case, like I mentioned, or removing, if it's something that doesn't belong in a governance handbook, then we shouldn't have it in there.
Well,
It's
we-
nice to talk about, you know, that we want equity, it's nice to talk about that we wanna do all of that, but we have other existing documents and areas where that purpose is
But-
meant to be.
But we monitor them, so our role in governance would be to monitor them.
Right.
So like that first one would be definitely, if you wanna change it, it would be monitoring curriculum and assessments and instructional materials. We could even policy, la 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 la.
Mhm. I just think, yeah, next time around when we are revising, that there might be some things that we wanna focus our attention on, so if I bring them up now, we can all percolate on them until, January. You know, there's some things that I think could be better phrased as well, like our handling concerns from the public and staff. When people complain to us, we will listen carefully, remembering we're only hearing one side of the story. And maybe that could be rephrased, you know, something a little lighter than when people complain to us. When people have feedback for us, whether it's good or bad. Yeah, input. So, you know, again, I'm just bringing this stuff up for us to kind of, again, percolate on. I'm not advocating that we write it right now or make those changes, and which we couldn't do because there's no board action that I've had for today. And, again, it's nitpicking, but when we talk about our protocol for visiting schools, we say it's a professional courtesy to call the superintendent. I think it's more likely that any given board member will probably email Michelle instead of call her.
It's their contact.
Yeah, contact, exactly, so. There's some small things here and there that I think would be worth reviewing and cleaning up. But overall, I like what it, talks about how we vote no, and we're going to respect each other. It talks about how we will listen to community input. It talks about how we as board members have an obligation to better ourselves through education. So it does, I like a lot of what we have in here, and obviously like in governance norms, we end with, and above all else, we will focus on the best interest of the students we serve. That's great. But those are just some things I wanted to bring up. If anyone else has any other feedback or have anything, checking wise, I'll turn it over.
Leslie, is it possible to mute yourself on the Zoom? There's some feedback. Well, you should be able to click on your picture or mute yourself, or go to the bottom on the left-hand corner and press mute for you.
So,
It's not allowing me to do it on my end.
Go ahead.
for the responsible use of social media, I really
Move your mouse-
appreciate
move your mouse
the
over it.
communication that I've seen from other board members. I feel like it has.
Been in alignment with this?
What?
Yeah.
Been in alignment with
It
this?
is, and and so, this is something I'm
Yes.
probably gonna wanna bring up as a separate agenda item for a future board meeting, based on feedback I've gotten from the community, is having some sort of a policy related to social media that's really delineated for staff.
It does not appear until you move your mouse.
Let's talk about that. Hold on. Bring up that specific point and then we can get. Let's do how they vote.
Okay.
Maybe raising the bill, helping the garden is not the best way to history. I don't know.
I don't know, I don't think it's something that I put in this, I meant for us to really delineate, but it's more of just, what we've done as a group is for next year. I think it'd probably be a good idea for us to,
Let's fix Leslie's problem.
yeah.
When I go over your video, it gives a little blue box with dot 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 on the top.
So we'll just go ahead and straighten out these technical difficulties and we'll pick it back up.
I'm on pause.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have that. I can mute you, Natalie. I cannot mute Leslie.
Right, because I'm not using my audio with this. So if I turn my audio down, will that help?
And that,
Audio is not.
yeah, Natalie, you seem to be talking, but now I don't hear you at all.
Okay, we lost them. You should have allowed the public see
I would
once
say
then.
maybe if you connect to the audio, then you can cut it to me. I don't know if it'll do that. If not, it's not a huge deal. I can open it.
Thank you.
Okay.
My sister says it doesn't allow me to go on. Because of my, say, I need to improve the responsiveness of my map. So that's more than I can handle right now.
Okay, we're moving forward.
All right,
Jordana had a point.
all right, let's hear it.
So, for starters, in terms of responsible use
Yeah,
of
that's
social media, just making the comment that, I really appreciate the communication that I've seen from fellow board members, and I feel like it has been following our governance handbook, just this responsible use of social media. I feel like it's been well handled. I've gotten feedback from some community members related to various staff members' communications and social media, and it sometimes may be, whether it might make sense for a future agenda item for us to, discuss that. Or if there's any weighing in that anybody present would like to,
Todd, come to the
chime in
party.
with, yes.
And we caught you eating, and we caught you eating, Todd.
Exactly. Sydney told me to wait until you had your mouth.
As I noticed that.
Yeah, I was a waitress, so
I
I
used to
thought.
be a waiter years ago, so it's just.
Yeah, exactly. It's a strategy.
So with that, I mean, there's a couple of areas that we have to take a look at when it comes down to, you know, messages that are being put out in social media or just in the community in general. One, of course, is always the freedom of speech aspect, you know, with people to have the rights to do so. The other part, though, is in our board policy is the level of professionalism that we expect from our employees in general. And there are sections in there that does address that specifically. And so if someone is doing things that are not necessarily representing the district in the best light, we can hold that individual accountable. For an example, there was a case last year, in which there was a teacher making some negative comments. And I addressed that specifically with that individual, and that individual made some changes and apologized for what was being done. Sometimes people just don't realize what's being said and how it affects the district or others personally, so sometimes just having a frank conversation with someone goes a long way.
So what about a situation where there might be a staff member who reaches out to, say on Facebook, friend, parents of their students? So they've taken the initiative, and then and there might be some educational reasons that parents might have gone ahead and accepted the friend request. But then after that has happened, too much information is being shared. You know, there's a mixture between there being academic purposes and then additional information that may be off the reservation.
Yeah, and not to sound kind of general, but it really is going to depend on a case-by-case situation on what's being said and what's out there. Again,
And
we can't.
unfriending them, which is,
An option.
Right, and so, I mean, a lot of it just depends on the relationship with those individuals and what goes on from there, and so, like I said, it's not to be just kind of oversimplified, but we would have to take this on a case-by-case basis.
So it would not be a situation where there's anything kind of policy that we could establish or any kind of, anything as a.
well, they do have an acceptable use for technology, and we do remind them and talk to them about representing the district and appropriate interactions with students online. So there are some of those protocols in place that they've been reminded of on an annual basis.
Plus the level of professionalism policy that you're mentioning.
Right, and part of it too is, are they using district owned devices or are they using their own? And so that would be another thing we have to take a look at. Yeah, school hours, is it during work time? Like I said, a lot of it can go into place, and there are some accountability measures the district can use.
And we have addressed use of social media during the work time with individuals since I've been here.
Now, is there any kind of policy related to a teacher in Facebook friending their current students, taking that initiative?
We have a policy in our board policy that states that they have, I'll put it out there that it's almost a no, because there are staff and student relationship agreements and requirements that are out there, and that becomes the issue, and we have to worry about that if, you know, they're Facebooking or tweeting their students right now, because we don't know exactly what's being put in there, and we have to look at issues with relationships with staff and with students. We always hear about the word grooming.
Yes.
You know, is this staff member trying to groom this individual for whatever purposes or not? And so based on that, we do have new policies that are in place. I think we approved a couple meetings ago. And that specifically had to do with the content and contacting current students.
Okay.
Okay, well, that was, good question worth asking. Anything else regarding the governance handbook before we move on to our community outreach efforts?
Just want to say that the back page, breaches of governance standards. We are a team. It doesn't mean we always have to agree with each other, but we at least have to be respectful towards each other. And whether it's on social media or conversations out in the community or during board meetings closed session, whatever, we wanna make sure that we are staying in our, as respectful board members, to each other, to our district. Again, once a vote takes place, we have to support that vote and not throw each other under the bus, and I'm really happy to be on this board because we've been really good in operating this ethically, morally, respectfully towards each other, which has been fabulous, and towards our staff. So I really, really appreciate this board. I cannot believe how much. And so, but if there is an issue, because we are coming up with a new board at some point, this is the procedures for censoring a board member for behavior that is the antithesis of what we'd like to have a board member be. And I would just say that maybe in the future, we just make sure that we have this in our back pocket if someone wants to just really go rogue and be unproductive. Because we always are asked, what do you do about this? What do you do about this? And
Right.
I've talked to CSBA numerous times, both the attorney Keith Gray and Walter Lee, another attorney, and yada, 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 Luann, about behaviors. And this is your only recourse. Board can't recall, board can't, there's a lot that we can't do, but this is one thing we can do.
I think it's a good point to make that, yeah, our governance handbook here covers, obviously, we hope to rely on the good side of things, but if things ever went the other way, our handbook does account for that. So I think it's a good point. Okay. Well then, let's move on to 3.6, our community outreach efforts, Board of Trustees. And I know that Cindy's eager, so I'll turn it over to her first.
Well, obviously, we're gonna re-up, what we wanna do, what we wanna attend and assign to ourselves. But especially, cause I was searching for, resolutions and mission vision statements and what
Right.
other people are doing. So I came across, Palo Alto Unified, and yes, we can say, ooh, but if you look up Palo Alto Unified and you go to their board, under About Us, under their Board of Education, they have this really neat tab. Besides upcoming meetings and board policies and meeting procedures, they have a tab called Liaison Agreements. And this is what it looks like. It's pretty cool. And it has committee assignments, and it has the name of the committee and the board or board members that are assigned to that. Then they have another section called school/program assignments. We could term ours schools/community/program assignments. And it has the name of the program or school and then the board member, so that if someone from, say, VOE PTA wants to talk to the board member that is assigned to that PTA, they can literally just click on the name and takes you to the email. So talking about other tools of engagement, we can and the whole thing is that why I like Liaison is it denotes like a back and forth. It's not just us in attendance, and maybe we don't attend every month because of a personal issue.
Right.
And we shouldn't be held hostage. Oh my God, you didn't go to the May GAC meeting or whatever. But that we are a liaison. So if I miss the meeting, you are more than welcome to contact me and berate me, but you also or give me an update or whatever. So it's a back and forth. So we could do something like that. Mark, I know that would be something we would need help with, but it would just be another engagement tool and be very transparent in what we're doing with the community. And then once we do set our time with trustee, however that's going to look, calendar, we can at least add a page for the meetings of where and when on the website under our board page, as well as put out the flyer. just my suggestion, I think it was pretty cool, I was like, oh, look at that,
I
this is
love the
pretty
idea.
cool.
Yeah.
Let me see what else they do that I wanna steal.
And although it's something,
Borrow.
you know, we did start, and we created this as a new board. What are the community events happening out there, and how do we want to make our presence? And I think it was wonderful that we as a new board did that. I think this takes it a step further in terms of just becoming even more accessible. We have this own document where we split it up last year, but I think having it on our district website with our email addresses right there and ways to contact us, boom, even better.
And using the word liaison, because
Yeah.
like I said,
It's
I
not
could
just
not,
attendance.
yeah, I could not go to the July 7th GAC meeting because Tony was in surgery.
Right.
Sorry, I'm not gonna be available.
Right.
Don't sit there and go, oh, and I know you, so I'm like, no, can you cover for me? But we shouldn't be, we wanna go, but sometimes something precludes us from going, and I don't wanna be like judged because I missed one flippin' meeting.
And oftentimes, it's not just us attending it, it's also us sharing out information and answering questions that people have about the school district. So it is much more than just, oh, we go to it every month. No, we
Well-
go to it and we engage with the people that are there. That's the whole purpose of it.
Well, there's some that, like the LCAP and the
Right.
CAB, we are there to observe, site
Yeah.
councils, we're there to observe, we can answer questions, cause like if they
Clarifying
have Measure
questions,
A
absolutely,
questions, whatever. PTA, same thing, we're there to be part of it and answer questions, but we don't insert ourselves,
I-
cause that's their meeting, not
I
ours.
should clarify, yeah, for community-based
Right.
meetings, absolutely. For district meetings that we're attending, just to have that presence and to observe what's going on and be just more educated, yeah, definitely.
I have to say that Lake Arrowhead Municipal Advisory Council, the LAMAC,
Mhm.
what was really cool is that we started to go, and Lewis Murray is part of both the Lake Arrowhead and the Crestline Macs, and he's like, well, let's just add the school district, not
Mhm.
Cindy Gardner or Jordan or Natalie, but the school district on the agenda, and you guys can do a report or a readout, and, you know, we gave, I personally would take what Michelle said at Red and just keep using it, and other stuff, my own stuff, and so when you go to these meetings, some of them, the community ones do end up reaching out and saying, we'll put you on our agenda, or they'll specifically acknowledge you like that.
Right. Okay, well then do we wanna go ahead and, start, splitting things up again?
Okay, I'm gonna put this out there, I'm gonna put this out there right away. The budget committee, Jordana, I know that you really wanted to, go on to the budget committee, so can we put you there?
I would love that.
Yeah.
Okay, and then,
Obviously, if I could please, I'm gonna be at LAE, I'm gonna be at Mountain Area Council, PTA for both of those, and happy to start.
I think,
I couldn't hear that.
she's Mountain Council, PTA, and she's LAE PTA.
So what I'm wondering, is it possible for us to have this document that we can modify on screen, and I'll look at that, you know, make sure that we're all, is that possible, or is that?
Putting up a
This is
Word
the
doc?
same one.
Yeah, it is the same, so I'll write it down, but I'm just saying, make sure if it was something that we all could see at the same time. But if that's.
Oh, shared
It would
document.
have been if I wasn't controlling the Zoom.
That's okay then, we'll just do it this way,
Um,
okay.
I think one thing that we
Well, I
might wanna,
could do, well, it would take a minute.
Let's not do that then.
Okay.
I think, we might wanna consider just an idea of something that's on here that's not, not part of our meetings that we go to. Chamber meetings,
I
local
was gonna
chamber
mention,
meetings.
I think that would be great.
Well, you got Running Springs covered, Jordan.
Yeah.
Are you reporting out at the Running Springs?
If there's, something newsworthy, I oftentimes do, but it's not on the agenda. But if we make it an official thing where a board member from our district will be at those meetings, then it will probably get agendized.
I think the Crestline chamber, it would be helpful for relationships.
Are you gonna go to that, Jordana?
I'm gonna go
Yes,
to that.
yes you are. Yay, we got somebody down there. I'm a little right now.
So chamber
Can
meeting.
I also stay on the parent advisory board, please?
Natalie.
Yeah.
So I think the only two that we can go to are the Crestline and the
No, there's
Running
a,
Springs.
there's
Lake
no
Arrowhead
Lake
doesn't
Arrow-
have public chamber board meetings.
don't they have events? They have the.
They have events, definitely.
Yeah, so who wants to cover the chamber
Okay.
events?
Okay, so chamber meetings and events. That's good, that's a good idea.
just because they have the business thing at Bill's Villager, they used to, whatever.
Yeah,
Still
the
do.
breakfast, business over breakfast,
So
yeah.
let's just put Lake Arrowhead Chamber and who's gonna insert themselves into the mix.
When time with trustees is not on this, it
Right.
would be better to just include it on this, so it's one
Thank
document.
you, that's perfect.
So who's on Lake Arrowhead Chamber?
I'll do that. I mean,
I go to a lot of their events anyway, so
Then-
I can too if we
So you
need.
said time with trustees included in this document?
yeah, Jordan and Cindy will do Lake Arrowhead.
Okay,
Take
I
one.
can also help with some of the Lake Arrowhead events.
okay,
Um, I think that that would be one that we could tag team, and we have kind of already in the past. I can't remember what it was, but I know there was one that all four of us showed, or four of us have showed up to at different times.
Yeah, especially if
It
it's a
was
community
taken in my
event.
mind, but a lot of us are just engaged in the community and do to a lot of those events anyways. So
Right.
for the Lake Arrowhead Chamber events, mark me down and we'll communicate
And
amongst
okay.
each other as they come up, which ones we want to do it on.
and just as a reminder for anyone listening, you know, it's perfectly acceptable for more than 2 board members to show up at any outside event, as long as we don't discuss district activity together. So we can all be present at the same thing and without violating the Brown Act, as long as I think we be cognizant of where we each are and that we are not discussing and making any types of potential decisions about the future of our district. So that's why we try to limit it to 2, but if more people show up, just be cognizant of that.
So,
I'm
what,
happy to stay on media committee.
Wait, which one?
media.
Let's go ahead and go through one at a
Yeah.
time, because I think we're getting a little, I'm already lost with which ones you signed up for, Natalie.
Oh, I already underlined.
Oh, you have them?
Yeah.
Okay, that's okay. But yeah, so time with we're adding chamber meetings and events, we're adding time with trustees. Are there any other community events that we're aware of that we need to be part of at this moment?
I'm wondering about whether, I know Michelle goes to the Sunrise Rotary, would it
Mhm.
make sense for us to try and tap into the Rotaries a little bit more? Lauren was
It's a
going to
paid-
Crestline?
It's a paid thing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You can, I mean, you can go once a year without becoming a member as a guest.
mhm,
So I've been a guest at, all the Rotaries here, Crestline, Lake Arrowhead, Sunrise, and that's I'm a member of, and then Lake Arrowhead Noon Club. So I'm on their guest list on an annual basis.
mm.
Let's stick a pin in it and let's come back to that, cause we shouldn't have to require us to pay.
To Lauren, join, or maybe
It
that.
should be a
yeah.
personal choice, cause
Should
they
be
also
okay.
ask you to volunteer for crap, and I'm just saying. Alright, cause Joe Benita, yeah,
Okay.
just
Um,
saying.
So
Okay,
if there are
gotcha.
no others, then yeah, let's go ahead and start going down the
Start at the
list.
top.
Yeah, LCAP stakeholder meetings. Last year, that was Dana and I.
I'll go,
Cindy would like to
You
go?
can take my place.
let's just switch.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, I'll offer it to Natalie if she's interested. If not, I'm happy to continue on it.
She's shaking her head.
She's a no.
Okay.
Leslie,
What day would that be on?
dude, we don't have a schedule yet.
Typically, whatever day that it's on, it's usually around 4:30 to 6:30.
It's the first we're going down the road, so LCAP.
Right, yes, I'd be happy to.
Okay?
Okay, and this will change and be revisited after the new board.
Yeah, whoever is on the new board should definitely revisit and
Okay.
reassign.
So Pab, Natalie wants to do that.
Okay?
And who's the second person? Jordana, do you wanna do
Let's see what days.
It's 3 meetings a year, they're always at 5 PM. We move them to the library to coincide with right afterwards, from
I don't know
PAP.
that we need 2 people for that. There's, in regards to audience numbers, there's usually like 1. So I feel like
Well,
one
let's
board
just-
member
if
could
somebody
handle
else wants
that,
to
if
go.
that was something that we wanted to do individually.
Okay,
Throwing it out there so we're not overcommitting ourselves to other things when it's not necessary for that.
that?
okay.
I'll keep my name on there,
Okay.
just because I have a personal interest in making sure that we comply with that
That's
lawsuit.
fine. WIMED, we had Cindy and Dan on there last year. It conflicts with a meeting that I have already, so I can't make that. It's always the second Tuesday of each month.
I'm good with continuing, or if somebody else is interested.
Me as well, I would like to continue. Isn't it,
They're good here.
okay,
Okay,
so Cindy
so-
and Jordana, rock on, sister, let's go.
All right, DLAC, I enjoyed that last year, and Cindy's also on that. I'd like to continue with that one, at least.
Me too, because PTA has been, RIM PTA has been supporting the ELAC, combined MPH RIM High. We've been doing support of that by providing food, and I'm gonna be doing that again, so it's kind of cool to see the continuation of like that conversation to the next level.
Okay,
And if DLAC was on the same day, you could have our meal again, Heather. No, just kidding.
We were trying to piggyback.
I know.
Maximize.
Give some more food out.
That seems to work well.
okay. Budget committee, we talked to Dana for sure, we'll be on that one.
She really wants to do that.
Yeah. Is there any interest over there?
No.
Okay,
I do, but it's whatever.
I think, you can stay on that, Cindy, if you want.
Okay,
Yeah,
if you're willing to
I'm willing.
back off, okay.
Okay, so I'll step down from that
Oh,
one,
it's
and
me.
Dana will
Oh,
get,
wait, Jordana, it's
there you go. Media committee, that was Jordan and Natalia last year.
Oops,
Yeah.
sorry, that was me.
Just a little bit of a typo, that's okay.
Natalie's good with staying
I
on.
think,
Okay.
I personally think that the two of you should continue because we just
Started
got
that.
in a groove.
Yeah,
And I think that unless you really have an
I
interest.
think also frankly, you guys do, yeah,
They're good,
with the
really
online
good
presence
writers.
too, I think there's just a lot of great going on there,
Yeah.
I agree.
okay, that's fine. How do you feel about that, Natalie? Oh, she
She's-
already said yes.
yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
perfect.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, school site council meetings.
Okay, I'm just gonna tell you right now,
Yeah.
I'm probably gonna be coordinator again, so Rim High and Mountain High, I'm good on that.
Okay, Cindy will do Rim High, Mountain High.
I wasn't on the
Mine
OE's
need to be
last,
taken off of all of, I can't do any of those ones because they're, because of the hours.
That's okay. I think you were only on MPH's last year.
And they were doing theirs in the morning.
and I could do I'd rather do the site council than with PTA, I was on PTA for MPH, and there are reasons why it did make sense for me to attend at times, so I think it'd probably be better for me to do site council.
Okay,
Which school?
MPH.
MPH.
I'm
That's
very
fine.
happy, to continue on at, BOE.
Okay. I'm happy to continue on at CAT, of course. LAE.
It's the last Monday? Natalie, when is PTA meeting for LAE?
We're gonna probably be pushing it a little bit later into virtual, so as we start, I don't know, and I'm also suspecting that these school site council meetings are going to change because of things going on, so I would just keep that in mind with the school site stuff, but maybe not.
Well, the Rim High and Mountain High had the same date and time, basically for, except for at the end because we needed to push some time to approve. But they were,
My experience with PTA, has been that we got more success actually on virtual with people coming, but at after work hours, so like 6 o'clock. And it wasn't as inconvenient for teachers or principals to attend because it wasn't like they were being forced to come back to this, not forced, but encouraged to come back to the school site at 6 p.m. They could just log on at 6 p.m. So I got better attendance at PTAs with them being later and virtual.
okay, so,
And that's likely what I will do with LAE and Mountain Area Council. I just need, confirmation from the rest of the team on that.
okay, so LAE, is the last Monday of the month, 3 to 4.
We're talking PTA or site council?
We're
Site
still in
council.
school site council.
No,
I'm
she's
asking
talking-
her to make sure that it doesn't conflict, the PTA meeting won't conflict with site council,
Okay.
that's all. I can do
probably,
it,
yeah, okay.
I can do it. Let me do an elementary, let me go go to
Here,
the
let's
little
put both
kiddo.
let's put both of us on it, and that way there's a little bit of,
And you know what, if you could throw me on VOE's, site council as well, please.
you got it. Perfect. Okay, that covers all of them. Government affairs.
I like that one,
I
just saying,
I go there every month as part of the chamber anyway, so I'll, regardless,
Who
if
else?
someone else wants to step up and do that, I'll still be there. Otherwise, I'll keep on and do both again still.
And I go to that one as well.
Yep,
I'd like to put myself down on there.
okay.
and Jordana, yay.
Okay,
Does Natalie or Leslie? No? Alright, moving on.
Crest Force MAC meeting, I would,
Leslie will be happy to go.
all right. I would like to go to that one, but, sometimes it does conflict, with,
Jordana, are you gonna continue?
Maybe we can just tag team it, or, yeah, I'd like to continue, but,
Okay.
I think if all three of us are there, that should be okay.
we'll put you and Leslie down.
Yeah, and then Jordana will just contact you.
Yeah.
Okay, Lake Arrowhead MAC,
I wanna go to that one still.
I
And-
can stay on that, and my attendance was poor, for that. So, I will work on improving that.
that's okay. If ever you can't go, Natalie, let me know, and I'm happy to go.
Okay. Now we're to PTA meetings.
Okay, I'll
I'm-
stay on CAT.
I'm on the Room High board and the Mountain Council PTA board, so I'm on two, so I go to those.
Okay,
And I'm on LAE and Mountain Council, and go to those.
okay,
So I went to VOE's last year, I was on there.
Do you wanna do that one?
I think I'd do VOE, and I'd say take me off of MPHs.
okay,
Okay, so I'm just letting you know that that little unit needs some love, so Natalie,
Do
should
you
I,
need MPH or VOE?
MPH, how about if I go there and be the MAC person on that?
Represented in there.
Yeah, Amberoni filled me on in our last meeting and it was
I
tricky.
had some other good interactions, but yeah, please,
Okay, I'll go to MPH.
thank you,
okay,
Lisa.
very good.
TLC.
Ring Rec and Park, we threw that one on last year, never really made a decision. I can make a commitment to go to those.
Okay, Jordan. You know what happens is that there's, like, the fourth Monday there's conflicts with other things, and so that's the issue, is like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh.
It's, cause it's often the last Monday, and that tends to conflict with, who knows,
There's
a lot
just-
of things.
I mean, I will try Jordan, cause
Okay.
I was on that board, so it's kinda cool to go back and revisit, but just like saying.
That's great. Crestline Connect,
I will be going.
Jordana!
And if you wanna put the time, it's, Wednesday morning,
yeah,
At what time?
7:30.
Oh my God,
It's a great group.
that's
It
not
is
it.
great.
Do they have coffee?
Well, no,
the
it's
Bear
in
House
person at
does.
the Bear House.
Yeah.
Right now
Okay.
it's zooming in, but it's just a really, it's a really fantastic group. And Rosemary comes once a month, and then Mom
Yeah.
Gorson is there once a month.
Is that weekly?
it
Yeah,
is weekly. I tended to go every few weeks or so and a little less often, because I'm driving from Arrowbear to the Bear House.
Yeah,
7:30 on Wednesday mornings. So I can, now that it's on Zoom meeting, I can make sure I can attend every week, and then when they go back in person, I might go back to every other week or once a month.
are you getting the emails, or is that just when I
No,
forward them on to you?
I've asked Penny, but,
Can you forward
gets
this to
lost.
me too?
Yeah,
Just because,
for the Zoom meetings?
okay.
Absolutely.
All right, chamber meetings and events, Crestline, the Lake Gregory Crestline Chamber of Commerce,
I will do that.
okay. Dana,
you're doing Running Springs,
I'm doing Running Springs.
and then Lake Arrowhead is you, me, and Natalie.
Well, if you just wanna, I'm happy to go to them anytime that I can, and I will. Same with Crestline, I try to support all their events, but sometimes they don't make it out there. But yeah, so you and Natalie are aware, Lake Arrow Communities Chamber doesn't have public board
Yeah.
meetings,
But they have
which
the
is fine.
business things.
They have tons of events.
Right.
Yeah, which all have been canceled for the rest of the year.
Yes. So it's gonna be easy.
Yeah, we learned that at the Government Affairs meeting.
Sign me up for that one then.
Yeah, I got you down, Natalie. Super.
Okay, and then we have our time with trustees.
We need to
Um,
set dates, but
correct.
how do we wanna do this during the time of coronavirus? Do we wanna do Zoom-in meetings and publish them? And do it that way and see how one goes?
Yeah, well, maybe one, but I don't wanna put together a whole schedule.
Yeah, I agree.
And have one person log on to them.
I would prefer if we put something like a set day. I mean, cause last year we kinda set them whenever we want, and I don't feel like that got the public attention the way that it just
Like
should
RIMED is
have.
the second Tuesday of every month.
Correct, I think if
If it
we
was
formalized it,
monthly and you set a date and time, but the location changed, because I know you were trying to get to Crestline, Lake
Mhm.
Arrowhead, and Running Springs,
right,
so we grouped 3 meetings all together, but
Mhm.
instead, if you knew that there was a schedule that went Crestline, Lake Arrowhead, Running Springs, Crestline, Lake Arrowhead, Running Springs, on the same date and time,
mhm,
then people could get used to who goes to which ones and what time they are at. I mean, some we did in morning, some we did in night, some we
Yeah.
did in the afternoon.
So,
I would recommend that so long as we're doing things virtual, it's just one, because why do we need to split up the
Right.
areas
Right.
virtually? So if for, the time being, we pick a day a month, whatever, the last Friday of the month, I'm just throwing that out there. And it be that until guidelines for COVID change, and then we can look at dates.
okay, so I'm just gonna make this, the first couple of weeks. Maybe like, the fourth
Start
Tuesday?
September.
Yeah, maybe like the fourth Tuesday of every month.
there seems to be a lot of stuff on the fourth, like the fourth Tuesday of the month's MPH PTA meetings.
There's
The
the-
fourth
the-
Monday of every month,
the
the Parks and
first-
Rec.
But third Tuesday.
There's not a lot on the 3rd.
Let's do the third Tuesday,
Okay,
third Tuesday of each month. Are we gonna set a time?
we should,
Okay, what time?
probably evenings, I would
Evening.
think, right? That's,
Yes.
I think that's when we
Natalie's
got our,
suggestion is at 6 p.m.
Yes.
I think that's when we got our highest attendance for any of the events this evening last year. Okay, rotating locations in an ideal world, in an in-person world,
And then,
Should, when we open up.
right?
And I would add to this as far as the day and the time, potentially seeing if the PTA would be the more active parents, if they have any other preference in terms of meeting with us.
that's why I'm looking at their meeting schedule. Technically, their organizational meetings occur in August, right before school starts. And even though their meeting date is incorporated into the bylaws, if they vote collectively to change that meeting date and publish it. So to be honest, I mean, we can kind of tell that,
I'm thinking is that PTA has if they think, hey, I bet you our community members would like to spend some time with a couple of board members, have questions, would like to have a discussion, to be able to know that they can.
I apologize. That being said, we've already committed to going to PTA meetings. So
yeah.
So how,
my experience is they pull me before or after if they have a question about it.
Yeah.
I don't know if scheduling another meeting to be mainly accommodating the same people serves our time very well.
and it's the other folks that we really wanna be able to reach, the people who don't have who don't,
Yeah, it's not the PTA people, because the
Yeah.
PTA people
Gary,
honestly have mine and Cindy's phone number.
yeah.
they know where I live.
Okay.
Everybody knows where.
And even PTA members, because I try to hit some once in a while, or I go to the mountain counseling, so those presidents know me. They will individually reach out to me, not just Cindy and Natalie. So they will reach out to me directly and ask questions or have concerns, so just because I attend mountain counseling, not mountain counseling, but
Mountain
mountain
Council.
council.
Okay, so third
It feels
Tuesday,
like that sometimes,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
oh
Like
my,
cousin, so I can be counseling.
exactly. We could do without some drama.
So who has this original document? Is this,
You want me to update it and send it, and then Mark can, I can send,
and then we can
do the link,
cross-reference and make sure it's right, yes.
and then we can, I'll send you guys the link to the Palo Alto thing, and you guys can look at it and mimic it.
Okay.
Would that be okay? Do you
Yes.
guys like that idea? Of
I
putting
do
it on
like
the
it.
board chat?
I do like that idea.
Awesome. We don't have to put the dates, you guys. It's just the name and your name.
I love that idea, yeah. If we just wanna review, Cindy, you signed up for twice as many things as other board members have been.
Really?
Yes.
Dang
You
it.
signed up for 15 of them.
No way.
Um,
I didn't think I signed up for
Because
that
some of
many.
those she's already just on,
Well,
Yeah.
some of those are mine.
just like Natalie.
mhm.
Yeah, school site council and PTA, I don't know what to tell you. That's 4 meetings right then and there. So technically, I've only signed up for 11.
Okay. So I'm just bringing that up in case,
I need to change it.
you need to change it, or in case anyone who hasn't been able to sign up for as many wants
Well,
to take some on and balance it out for you.
The other part is that this is like really till November, and it's gonna have to change after
Of
November
course, yeah.
probably. So then we can revisit the whole thing again.
I'm just mentioning it to you now.
All
As you're
right.
making this type of commitment, that you know what you're getting into.
Well, I think I
Um,
had this one, yeah.
And then for time with trustees, I know that for now we're planning on doing maybe one Zoom meeting, because Natalie brings up a good point. Why do we have one Zoom meeting for each area? But we could honestly have 3 Zoom meetings. I mean, there's enough of us where we could do one Zoom meeting for each area at the same day, same time, and we each have to do our own Zoom.
Ooh, look at you brainstorming.
So,
Okay.
because that way it'll allow more of us to be in the time with trustees and actually do it. And because if we only do one event once a month on Zoom, then only 2 board members can do it.
Look at him think. Okay.
And then whoever gets whichever area it might be, well, I guess it would make sense to follow our own areas. So Dan and Leslie do one Zoom for Crestline area, and then I do mine on my own, and Cindy and Natalie do the Lake Arrowhead area. We could do that, or we could rotate, mix it up. I know last time we said we want one board member from the area, one board member not from the area. We're all thinking, I see the wheels
Yeah.
turning.
We had such poor attendance. I don't know, I'm thinking that there's gonna be an additional barrier potentially with doing a Zoom, as, you know, but there are other folks that would find that more convenient.
I
Just
think,
having 3 of them, when we were having at most 2 attendees.
I think with a predictable time schedule, and if we're only doing it once a month,
Yeah.
I mean, even that seems odd, because if we do it once a month, 2 board members, that means the average board member will only attend time with trustees once every 3 months or so.
Yeah.
That doesn't seem like a lot of, for the idea of us being out there in the open and meeting the community where they are,
Yeah.
us attending once every 3 months
That's not
seems like not very frequent.
No.
Maybe it's one area, maybe we do all 3 areas every month. Same day, same time.
There's probably not gonna be any kind of the back to school thing, any opportunity to be able to do that this year, correct?
The principals are planning some type of, communication or event, but it will most likely just be to pick up technology and schedules. And it would be, video and Zoom or Meet, so they're trying to do something. But what I have suggested to them yesterday in our admin meeting is that even the CDC announced last night, the director of the CDE, that kids need to go back to school, and we are still within the 14-day window in which we could be open. So I asked them not to plan things till August 10th, because it could all change again. And so we are trying to err on the side of
Flexibility.
Yeah, and making sure that, you know, even the welcome back, we have changed, the format. It's just going to be me and the guest speaker doing a video that principals can share, or I can share out depending, we just don't know, and we still can't gather. So it has to be, strategic, and it has to be, we just don't even know if what's gonna be relevant in 3 weeks' time. If that makes any sense to you. They are planning something, it's going to be digital based.
Just wondering, especially with the Zoom, meeting potential or others, if at that time when they're coming and picking up things or doing things, if we could have some sort of a communication to those families about us having a time of trustees or having some sort of an event, or even being able to let them know.
We can create a poster.
So right now, we do things, we can send it to their email without making it a phone call, which is on some things that I have done that have been not as important, so that everybody gets an email, employees and families. And then we post on social media as a way to get around that, because the people get that phone call and they automatically, panic
Yeah,
or ignore it.
yeah.
So, but there are some ways that we can email every family, email every employee, and post on social media.
Okay, so,
Okay, so our decision is, what are we gonna do? Which Tuesday? The third Tuesday in August or starting September? Which one do we wanna start with? First of all, let's break it down to that simple. Are we starting in August or September?
I would suggest September,
Me
just
too.
because the uncertainty
Okay, September it is.
of August, but
And then are we gonna do all 3 areas on that day, or one area on that day?
I think if that's the day and that's the time, it needs to be all 3 areas at that date and time, if different board members are running it.
And one Zoom?
one Zoom or 3?
That's.
One allows 2 board members, 3 allows all 5.
I'm not gonna be available in September on that third Tuesday. But just,
Okay.
It seems kind of silly to have 3 in 3 different areas when now digitally we can all collectively come together. So for September, who wants to sign up for September? Zoom, 1 meeting advertised across the communities.
And what day would that be?
It's the 3rd Tuesday of every month
and that's when the Crestline
at 6
Chasing is.
p.m.
The third Tuesday is Crestline?
Are you kidding me? Dana?
Oh, maybe we should reevaluate that then. Because then that'll preclude you from attending any then.
Yeah.
Well, Shiza, which day of the week?
There's a-
Saturday,
No, no
Actually-
Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Mondays are not good because
Is
people
it-
don't
What
remember.
about Wednesday?
The 3rd Wednesday of each month?
Okay, that's right after site council.
That's school site council for IFS.
It's okay, it ends
Then
no
it's
later
2
than
hours
4.
before.
Yeah,
If it's 6 p.m. on a Wednesday, third Wednesday, I can do that.
okay.
Isn't it the first Wednesday is the teacher RTA meeting?
the first Wednesday is.
We've made a commitment that we will never schedule something on that, just to let you know.
First Wednesday, you said?
First Wednesday of every month,
Yeah.
we cannot schedule on,
Yeah.
ever.
Okay.
Okay, so now it's the third Wednesday of each month at 6 p.m. starting in September. Who wants to do the Zoom meeting? 2 people, up for grabs.
I can do that.
Look at Jordan is going up to
I'll do it.
the 20th.
The 16th,
I'm
no.
not here.
Third
You know what?
Wednesday of each month, 6 p.m., beginning in September. Dan and I are the first ones.
Wait, got a question for you.
Sure.
Should we leave them nice since we're running? What do you think?
Doesn't
What was
matter to
that?
me.
It'll be the first one after candidate closure.
Oh.
Should it be Jordan and I together?
Yes, that would-
Okay, it's gonna be you and me, dude.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay.
Good.
And then, cause then we can set the time.
And then, so in October, I would assume that would switch over to,
Wherever.
Dana, Leslie, or Natalie, two of the three of them. And then in November, we switch back over again. Okay. Well, that's great, and then we can reevaluate.
Oh, that's what we're saying. Who's doing October? Jordana and
Okay.
Natalie, does Natalie wanna do October?
Remind me of the day in October.
It'd be the third Wednesday of the month at 6 p.m.
I think that should be fine.
Okay.
Okay.
Leslie, do you wanna do November?
Yes, November is good for me.
Okay, Leslie and who else?
I will have to coordinate where I'm gonna do this since I don't have
Jordan.
reliable internet.
Jordan,
Well, we don't know where we'll be in November, so we're not sure how that'll look. It might, who knows?
Who knows?
Jordan, do you wanna take November?
That's fine.
Okay, Jordan's, okay. Let's not schedule December because technically that,
December, I think we'll revisit this whole list.
well,
of
the other
whoever
part
the board
is that for PTA? It's like,
Oh,
you're,
that's November, I might not be under,
you're still on the board until the December,
Board meeting.
that Friday, after the second Friday, la.
Yeah.
You're still on the board through December.
okay.
I don't think we should schedule time with trustee in December, it's too crazy.
Yeah.
It is crazy, and then, yeah, we'll leave that up to,
Okay. So we're scheduled for, we'll
For
put
three
this
of them, that's
schedule out
perfect.
right now.
perfect.
Okay.
All right. I know we went a little bit over on that, but I think I'm glad we took care of it.
Right, moving on. The
Okay.
good stuff.
3.7, Local Control and Accountability Plan, LCAP, discussion/direction, Heather Dominguez, Director of Educational Services and Board of Trustees.
Right. Nothing like the 1:20 slot on a Friday afternoon after lunch to talk
Yeah, what-
about.
Woohoo!
Woohoo! So,
Super
I have a
excited.
slide up there, and that could be read a couple of ways. I could have put a question mark after it, or I could have put exclamation points
Or
after it.
a cry emoji.
Or I could, so we can be deficit mindset, or we can be asset mindset, and I decided that I was gonna be asset minded, and I was gonna go, woohoo, ready for the ride, instead of, ready for the ride? So we're gonna try to look at this from an asset lens of how can we use this as an opportunity. I've already learned some new things throughout this experience of Google Classroom, Google Gmail, Zooming, all kinds of things. So the first thing I wanna do is, go over what has happened since the last time we met. I know the last time we met, we're supposed to have an LCAP workshop where we talked about the LCAP. And a lot has happened from then to now. So I'm gonna give you some information first, and then we will discuss. Okay, next slide.
Michelle.
Oh,
has the
Michelle has
clicker.
it, do I need to click on it? Oh.
Forgot about the ABC committee.
Oh, oh shoot,
Oh, you did forget some? You did rewind?
We did,
the ABC.
correct. Can we go backwards there a little bit?
Yes.
Yeah, we're not doing any action here.
No.
We forgot to talk about the ABC committee meeting. Last year, I was a part of that, and I can't recall who else was.
That's just you.
It was just me, that's why. Who wants to do it this year? We can have up to 2, right?
We've reduced the number of meetings to, I believe, 4 a year.
4 a year? 4 a year.
And they are at 4 o'clock on a Monday. And it has a teacher, a student, an admin, me, Mark.
I'm happy to continue
Classified
it if no one
employee.
wants to jump in.
Well, I have
What is the purpose
15.
behind it? It's
We
the-
just, we basically review the Heart for All
It is.
procedures and video making, which is, and we also look at superintendent communication on Facebook and
You
what
wanna
they're
do that?
hearing. Kind of rumor control a
Jordana.
little bit.
And Jordana,
Okay,
And that was 4 o'clock, which Mondays?
they haven't been set.
I think
Yeah,
they-
they have been set,
yeah.
but I,
Okay.
off the top of my head, I don't know.
That's okay.
So who's doing
you'll
that?
get the invite.
Jordan and Jordana.
I already have the invites for the year, but I didn't accept because I wasn't sure who would be on it.
Can you go with that?
We usually have one rep from each type of,
So is it better
Oh,
just to
okay.
have one person then, except
Yeah,
Well, you
then-
can be on it.
You
You're
can take
another
it.
doc. Two of us can be on, we're leaving you on,
Okay.
cause you need something else.
Yeah, trouble.
Okay,
Okay, I'm sorry about that.
That's okay, no problem. All right, so since the last time we talked, we have Senate Bill 98 and Ed Code Section 43509 that has now been enacted. And basically what that addresses is that the California School Dashboard will not be published in December of 2020 based on any performance data in either state or local. The Local Control and Accountability Plan, or LCAP, and the annual update is not required for the 2021 school year. So last we met, I believe there was talk of it being done in December, an abbreviated form of it. It has been completely eliminated from the 2021 calendar. In its place, there is something now called the Learning Continuity Plan. It's actually the Learning Continuity and Attendance Plan.
that's why it's an LCAP still.
Well,
Yeah.
this is the thing, is all the webinars I've attended, and I've attended a few, they all say, this is not LCAP, this is not LCAP like, this is not LCAP light, this is not anything like the LCAP.
But yeah, it's
But
still-
yet they gave us the
The
same
same
acronym.
acronym.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So I think that's just, the I don't know, the
Call
CDE
foul.
and their sense of humor, I don't know. But anyway, we are not to compare the two, they're not the same.
though it has components that
That
are,
are similar,
Mhm.
so,
That's nice.
yes. So the Learning Continuity and Attendance Plan is what we're gonna talk about. Here are some timelines for it. It must be adopted by the board by September the 30th and filed within 5 days after adoption. The County Board of Education will file it with the superintendent, then we send it to our county. Although they do not have to approve it, they do have an opportunity to give us feedback on it that we have to be responsive to. So, one thing that is the same in terms of LCAP is that stakeholder feedback is a must. So we must consult, we must solicit recommendations from the public, plan to meet with our parent advisories and our LEL parent advisories, hold a public hearing, and an adoption. So those two pieces are the same, the LCAP had a hearing and an adoption. We must have options for remote participation and provide opportunities for parents who speak a language other than English. So the governing board, after consulting with teachers, principals, administrators, other school personnel, bargaining units, parents, pupils, all of this to be done before it's due September 30th. We need to hold these stakeholder meetings. So we have already disseminated this template. I'm gonna share with you the template and the components of the plan with our administrative teams, because as the sites are developing their return plans, we want to assure that these components are being embedded in those plans. So we need to notify members of the public of the opportunity to submit their feedback. That would be at the public hearing. So as I'm looking at the calendar for school board meetings, we have a board meeting on September 10th. The hearing and the adoption cannot be on the same day. They have to be at separate meetings.
so we'll have to do a special.
There's gonna have to be a special board meeting. So we're gonna need to make those decisions because we'll have to backwards plan, which I do not begin with the end in mind. We'll have to have the draft completed by, we have to decide which board meeting, if that's gonna be the 10th. and then the adoption later, or do we wanna move that? Those kinds of decisions have to be made. We'll present the plan, and we have to have enough time to prepare the plan, present the plan, get feedback on the plan, have the hearing for the plan, and then ultimately adopt the plan.
Yay,
And
so
then,
much time.
we have, the superintendent of the school district must respond in writing to comments received from any of these committees related to their feedback. Again, the public hearing for review and comment, and then it will be adopted at a governing board public meeting, but not at the same day as the hearing, so they must be two separate meetings. So a review of what this needs to have included. After we submit it, we have to file it no later than 5 days with the county office. And again, they do not approve it, but they may provide feedback. And then we have to be responsive after if they submit recommendations to us in writing for amendments, we have to amend them by October 30th in response to that feedback. And then take it back to the public.
And they really are gonna do that in 30 days,
That's
in
All of
time.
the school districts.
This is what
The
is a
CDE.
requirement across the entire state of California.
So the CDE is really gonna do that. Okay, let's
And-
see.
And why we're having this discussion is because of this timeline, but the components that we would normally discuss in the old LCAP, those components about instruction and assessment and student achievement and learning gaps are all addressed
Right.
in this new one.
Right.
So we're just, it's the same acronym, we're just,
It's just
in
changing, yeah.
components, it's,
And we don't have the dashboard data to
No.
go with it.
Correct. Then we have to post it on our website. So any questions about that part of it, just what I've shared thus far? Nope, okay, we'll keep moving on.
Yeah, we have time to make that.
So, here are the requirements. So, provide a brief overview of how we will provide continuity of learning and address the impact of COVID-19 on pupils, staff, and the community. That's the big picture, okay? If there's a stakeholder engagement section, in that section, we will have to provide a description of the options provided for remote participation at public hearings, the efforts made to solicit feedback, including efforts to reach families and other stakeholders that do not have internet or who do not speak languages other than English. So how are we engaging those stakeholder groups? Okay. In terms of instruction, we have to provide a description of the actions that the LEA will take to offer classroom-based instruction whenever possible. So the preference is still to provide in-class instruction, even if we can't provide it for everyone. What are we gonna do to provide it whenever possible? Particularly for those students who've experienced learning loss or who are at greater risk of experiencing learning loss due to any future closures.
Okay, those two components, how are we, I mean, we can assume there's learning loss, because we basically did supplemental. So are we going with the assumption that every kid has learning loss, or are we how are
that's
we?
another component.
We're gonna get to
Oh,
that.
okay.
Hold that
Woo!
thought.
Okay,
Good question.
You're reading their minds. Okay. We have to provide mental health and social emotional well-being. So how are we gonna monitor and support mental health and social emotional well-being, a description of any professional development that we're providing, and how are we addressing students that may have had trauma as a result of COVID-19, that whole, so SEL component. School nutrition, a description of how we're going to provide meals for our pupils who are eligible for free and reduced lunch and for participation both in person and during distance learning. So we have to have some plans for both scenarios. And then distance learning programs, staff responsibilities, we have to describe how the new roles and responsibilities of affected staff due to the COVID-19 pandemic, and what PD, professional development resources, are we providing them? And then a continuity of instruction. How are we assuring the instruction during the school year that they have access to full curriculum? We were talking earlier about our two primary focuses are safety and quality of instruction, regardless of mode of delivery. That's where that instructional framework comes in. That's where the portrait of a graduate comes in, that regardless of whether we're remote or whether we're in class, we want to have some frameworks in place that we have quality instruction. How are we going to assure that our students can access devices and connectivity for all pupils to support distance learning, as well as actions that will be taken to measure their program participation, their progress, and time value of pupil work? Because in a distance learning environment, there will be so many instructional minutes required. How much of that is direct instruction? How much of that is student work time? And making sure that we are giving value to that time that students are working independently on projects when they're not virtually meeting with their
And in the strategic plan, we call that synchronous and asynchronous learning.
Then the engagement and outreach. We know that we had a number of our families who did not participate in our distance learning at the closure last year. So what strategies are we going to implement and procedures in order to reach those parents and those students who are not participating or engaging in the learning opportunities digitally? And what are we gonna do to reach out to those families who are not meeting the mandated compulsory education requirements? What outreach will be provided to them?
That's important because I have two little girls that had asked me to bring all their work, and did I submit any? No, the whole time, and every week I would ask, "Hey guys, do I have stuff to turn in to MPH for you?" And
So
I
with
actually
the-
got two pieces
Yeah.
out of stuff.
So one thing, if, commuting to our families, is this is gonna look very different than it did last year. This is going to be attendance is being taken, instructional time will be,
Grades.
grades will happen, there will be in-person instruction every single day, even if we're virtual, those kinds of things. And our, site admin teams are working with their leadership teams to develop those plans, we're working with the union, all those conversations are taking place right now.
So
And it
what
just-
what is happening at BOE as far as the, with Lauren no longer in that position? in
She's
terms
still
of-
here till the
She's
end
still
of the
here
month.
to the, yeah, she's launching the school
She's
year with us.
doing all of these things.
Okay.
Yep.
And then shoot, I lost it. Go ahead.
And we're gonna get, right now I'm kinda giving you a broader overview of what the components are, then I'm gonna give you the actual template, as well as kind of a cheat sheet on the components. It's a little bit easier to,
And then we're gonna take
Highlight.
ideas and your conversations
Right.
and memorialize those on some charts.
so first I'm kinda, I guess this is the direct instruction where I'm giving you an overview of here's what it's looking like, this is what's changed, this is what's happened, these are the components. Then we'll kinda dig into it a little bit more, break it down a little bit more. This is more of a helicopter view of it.
Oh,
guess.
I know what I had a question of. When you talk about the direct instruction in Zoom or however it's going to be for direct instruction,
Mhm.
is that going to be like a consistent time so that our little lovies have to get out of bed?
That's the schedule that they're developing right now.
Awesome, thank you.
I forget to add part of this negotiated,
Mhm.
so that's what
Right.
what we're.
I know, I'm just thinking of some of the kids that I touched base with, some slept in a lot, and just saying. We know we have some teenagers that like to sleep, so just making sure that,
Mhm.
yeah.
And we also wanna have schedules that'll be, mirror as much as possible what they would have in a traditional setting,
There you
because
go.
we have to, when we move back into that, we wanna have that already established.
Okay.
It will have to look different digitally,
Okay.
obviously, but as closely
Right, okay, cool.
aligned as possible. Pupil learning loss, so again, you touched on this, and there's another section here that talks about how are we going to, assess that component. And then the unique needs of our pupils that are English learners, pupils with exceptional needs, foster care, homelessness, those particular student groups, which are our unduplicated students.
And low income?
And low income is referenced, it wasn't referenced, what's on this slide?
No, but that's why I was
But
asking.
it is
It's
referenced in some other,
unduplicated.
yeah.
Okay, awesome.
And then we'll have to put in, as for Jenny and I'll have to work together, because we have to describe how our federal and our state funding is used to support the efforts that we're describing in the learning plan. And then how are we, this is the same as the LCAP in terms of the increasing or improving services to our students of greatest need based on the number of our concentration of unduplicated pupils.
Okay, now I have another question, sorry. So that component there, how do we know we did that? Because I have not heard, nobody has heard if we're gonna be doing the standardized testing in the spring. So then, how, you know, talk about data, how do we measure that we did that? Just rhetorical question. Does it become local assessments, what, you know, grades, so just rhetorical. Sorry. Oh, I already had a question, there you
There
go.
you
3,
go.
4.
Any other questions about, so that's, now there's a couple of other slides beyond it that I'm not gonna review that just compares LCAP to that were part of the state presentation, but it compares what are the components of the LCAP that are the same or different from the I'm not calling it, I'm refusing it to call that, the
Yeah.
learning continuity and attendance plan.
Right.
So, this will be our plan for this school year. It has to be completed by September 30th. We have to get feedback between now and then, and so that's why there was a roller coaster at the very beginning of this.
So if
Ready for the ride.
if we are starting remotely, how are we able to quantify any kind of degradation in learning?
So one of the things that is a part of the plan that our principals are putting together is, earlier we talked about that instructional framework, and that formative assessments need to be a part of that. We have a number of resources that we can utilize, and so that's one of the things they're meeting with their leadership teams to say, we have the interim assessments that can be used, we have curriculum embedded assessments that can be used, we have the Renaissance Learning STAR math and STAR reading that can be utilized, which are things that they're used to using or have familiarity with. So this isn't the time for us to go out and get a bunch of new assessments that they've never had any exposure or experience with. So coming together with their leadership teams to say, which of those tools do you believe best serve the purpose of getting a beat on where your students are now, and really chunking our year out. So the first 3 weeks, we're gonna be looking a lot at launching the year, how do you use Google, what are the digital citizenship kinds of things, here's the plan, then really looking at the year in chunks. The next 6 weeks, the next 6 weeks, the next 6 weeks, and what are you gonna teach, part of that instructional framework, how are you gonna assess it, and how are you going to intervene and adjust as needed.
So when are we giving those assessments, like the first day, the
Would be
second day?
the first day of school. It'll be the first 2 or 3 days, they just need to be able to acclimate, hello, how was your summer,
Right.
where is everyone?
Like
It's
how
just
did you
us
Three-week
feel-
period.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I'm asking.
So
for.
within the first 3 weeks.
Got it.
That would be the assessment
Now, what
time
that looks
and-
like for individual schools is we met with secondary principals yesterday. I'm meeting with elementary principals on Monday, and I gave them what they need to have to, they're all meeting with their leadership teams next week. They have to have 2 things to me so I can update the strategic plan and give it out to parents the first week of August. 1 are those learning assessments, and 2 is their schedule. They're either a block schedule, the same as the class schedule, but each site will determine that for themselves, and we will publish those in the strategic plan the first week of August, so that it's transparent and communicated.
Now, does any school site use IO, EDMS, whatever
So-
you wanna call it?
So let me tell you
Illuminate?
what's happening with that. IO EDMS was purchased by Illuminate.
Illuminate,
And
very good.
Illuminate is a big, so we are in the process, we've been meeting, we had meetings this week, in the process of migrating from IO EDMS over to Illuminate DNA. It has a lot more resources because they purchased School City, IO EDM, they purchased a bunch and they took the best of all of those
Ooh, a
and
merger.
put them into a new process, which, means a new learning curve a little
Right.
bit. So we've already got some professional development that we're planning. We're in the process of getting them all rostered, but we're gonna use that tool primarily at the secondary level.
Okay,
Because what we found is that elementary, not utilizing it as much. They have other tools they're using like Star Reading and Star Math. Again, focus, we had too many pieces we were using.
right, that's what I'm
So,
asking, is,
yeah.
and then I guess, is it a lot different than the IO-EDMs in terms of because those teachers that were trained on IO-EDMs, will it look familiar enough where they go, oh my God, yet another one?
That's what we're being told,
Okay.
until we see the platform and get it, they're working on a tool right now that's supposed to be launched in September, where any assessments teachers have built in IO-EDMs will be transitioned and transferred into the DAA
Oh,
system.
yay!
It integrates with Aries.
Okay,
They can do a lot more with it than they could do with IO-EDMs. They
Okay.
can still push to gradebook, they still have the inspect questions where they can build their own assessments. So it has the same features, it's a different parent company now.
okay,
They still have the dashboard where they can pick, and so there's a lot of similarity to it, but there will be a little bit of a learning curve, and we had no control over that.
no, I know, I know, but,
Yeah.
and then the other question is that we're pushing using IB out of the CASP. And then we have IO, which, this was a question from a teacher, or in a psych council discussion, so what are you pushing more to be utilized? How's
Okay,
that?
so when we think of assessment,
Right,
I don't have my little grid to show you, but assessment is a system. We have summative assessments that are the furthest away from the kids. So here's the kids.
Right.
Here's your tasks.
right,
General overview. Then we have our benchmarks,
Right.
which are more frequent, but
Right.
still further away from the students.
right,
Then you have your teacher-made assessments, your unit tests, your weekly check-ins, those are the closest
daily
to the
thing,
kids.
whatever.
So there's a need for all of them.
Okay,
So the the interim assessments can be used in two capacities, as a benchmark as well as a formative assessment for the teachers right after they taught that particular standard.
okay,
So they can be used in both,
so in other words,
in tandem with each
they
other.
take care of different aspects, it's
Correct.
not mutually exclusive, they
Correct.
should be used in tandem.
Correct.
Cause I think that is one of the confusion of some that go, wait, is it, why are you're making me do IEB and IO?
And that's the
That's
terminology.
why they're
we're-
writing the plan.
Yeah, we're trying to get away from that whole way of thinking of you're making me.
Right,
Because it shouldn't be about we're making anybody. It should be about what is
Which
the tool
tools?
that is best going to give me instruction to help me help my kids.
and I think that's the confusion.
So communicating that maybe more effectively,
That's
to
why we
say-
provided that training for secondary yesterday and elementary admin on Monday, so that we're all saying and preaching and using the same vocabulary for the plans that they are coming up with for those assessments and for their schedules.
Perfect. Just making sure, because I know that there's so many layers and it gets muddy a little bit, and so I think that's great.
So with everything going on, are we, in your guys' opinion, adequately staffed in technology to support being able to have more of a remote approach?
Look at Mark's
I was
face.
gonna say, I'm
Look
like,
at Mark's face. He's like,
We do have, I mean, the one advantage, perhaps, I can count as a half-time employee for technology.
You're already wearing so many hats.
I know, but Mark and I met for, most of the day yesterday, and we were able to pull up, like, our district does not have a responsible use policy, but with devices going home, we need to have one. So I've written those and technology board policy in my previous assignment, and so we were able to rewrite those within an hour yesterday, because I have them on the Word because I wrote them in Coachella. So we are using some things to help so that he's not alone. The CTO for the San Bernardino County Schools is David Thurston. He was my mentor when I graduated from the CTO program, and so he and I communicate regularly. He has offered to send up his entire tech team to help Mark dismantle carts, Mark and Lori
Wow.
dismantle carts. so that we can get them ready for distribution. Our library media techs will be coming in to help barcode starting next week based on Lori finishing barcodes herself. We have access to, one thing that I did to assist in negotiations was write up what are we doing for technology right now to get Chromebooks out? So, and Mark is coming to Cabinet on Tuesday to talk about any other things that we may need to purchase. We already purchased, well, they're not here yet, but we did purchase a camera for every teacher, so they don't have to use as you can see, using their laptop one sometimes is difficult. So they have not been able to order until this week. There's only a very limited amount of them available, but they are earmarking those for RIM. So that's what we've been told they would do if we processed our PO immediately. So we did that yesterday. And so but overall to support, like in Coachella, we had 5 teachers on special assignment, 5 TOSAs just for teaching with technology. So, we had an entire department dedicated to best practices for teaching. So we don't have a TOSA for technology, but our TOSAs have been helping in that area as it relates to best practices. We did have all the teachers attend Google training, and we're gonna have a refresher available for them in August prior to the start of school, now that we're doing full-time distance learning.
And we have that
Should frighten
module,
them.
right? We have that training on the website, archived, right? So you can always go back and click, I forgot how to do this, right?
Yes.
In addition, we provided PD at the beginning of last school year where we had someone come in and do a Google
Right.
Classroom. So that resource document that she created with all the different resources, that's being posted on the website as well. So lots of Google resources that are self-help things. The new teachers and the subs are being trained on
The county has a ton of teacher resources for technology that all teachers in the county have access to. So to answer your question, we need more help, but we're not completely stranded.
We're small but mighty.
Well, always, but just in terms of, if there's anything that could help, sounds like you're already doing all that outreach, yeah.
I guess one of the concerns on the technology thread is, part of those requirements is LEA will ensure access to devices and connectivity for all pupils to support distance learning. That's quite a tall requirement for school districts. Does that come with any monetary
Yes.
assistance?
It's like Governor Newsom also mentioned it when he talked about it.
He did mention that,
That's
yeah.
why the technology request form went out yesterday, so we have an exact count. We are asking every family to complete that form. If they need a Chromebook, we are prepared to give 1 per family right now, and we are ordering more one thing that these monies will do is allow us to finish 1-to-1 in the name of COVID.
Because students won't
So-
necessarily have connectivity even if they have.
No, but we're already in hotspots. We already
Yeah.
have a partnership with Verizon.
Oh, great.
And so, but we need a count. So that's why it's imperative our families answer that request form by Wednesday.
So when it says ensure access, it's not, well, okay, what's your enrollment? You need that number.
No,
It's any ensure access means
They could have a
anybody who
personal
requests
device, like-
access should have access.
well, and it could be Wi-Fi on wheels. It could be that the multi-purpose rooms are open for certain hours for access and they can bring
Right.
their device to the school.
With
It does
social
not
distancing.
necessarily have to mean in their home.
Okay.
Could be
It could be, at
libraries,
school sites, if we put in Wi-Fi extenders that'll reach out into the parking lots, is that
Yes.
an option? Okay.
I
So
know-
access can be very,
So there's
yeah.
flexibility in there that'll allow us to make sure we meet this. Okay.
Other districts have big, I know LA Unified is talking about using local libraries, the public libraries. I don't know whether that's something that we've
I can
considered.
talk a little bit about local libraries. When this pandemic began, a lot of public libraries began saying, how can we ensure patrons still have access to Wi-Fi? Because a lot of people rely on public libraries for Wi-Fi. So a lot of those public libraries purchased Wi-Fi extenders to make sure they go out into the parking lots because their buildings were closed down. San Bernardino County Public Libraries they went the other direction, they turned off Wi-Fi, and it's still not available in any library right now. So I'm not sure we'd be able to partner with the county on that, considering they turned off, they disabled Wi-Fi so that people wouldn't come to the library.
And Scenic, the board that I'm on, is the backbone for all colleges, research agencies, K-12, and public libraries within the state of California. And they have been very responsive to the pandemic and making sure their nodes and things are up and running and how many more they need, and building redundancy in their system so that there is enough bandwidth to meet the demands of distance learning. And so I know we had a board meeting this week, all week, on Tuesday. No, I don't remember what day it was, Tuesday or Wednesday, I think. And so, but they've been very responsive to making sure that all of the agencies have enough bandwidth.
So I'm gonna give you a copy of the actual template that's been developed. It is currently a draft. It is not going to be finalized until the 1st of August, is when they're required to have it out to us, so this still could change. What we were told is that most likely much of the content will not change, the formatting or the structure of it could be abbreviated somewhat, but that we can begin planning based on these elements. That's why we shared it with our administrative team, so that as they build their plans, one of the things in here you'll see is professional development. How are we providing professional development opportunities for our teachers to be able to give them training in Google Classroom and the things that they need in terms of a distance learning environment that are aligned with that instructional framework. We're working with the union. We have another meeting on Wednesday with them. So all of these things coming together to help us align our practices with what this document is expecting.
So the social emotional piece, the mental health piece, are we also looking at PD that on SEL, mental health, reach out, what is our reach out program, but are we doing PD on that aspect for our teachers?
We are, and we also have our TOSA that's dedicated to PBIS,
Right, I know.
and so that person is able to kind of help facilitate some of those things. Since everybody's on vacation, it may feel a bit challenging, but we've been reaching out. They've been going to trainings all summer long. The wellness conference, our counselor's been to several conferences, so they are getting their own professional development over the summer, and then when they come back, we'll be developing more specifics in terms of the plan. Once we know the daily schedule, once we know, when PD time will be allocated, then we can plug those things in. So the
Continuing
first-
with Care Solace is
Yes,
part of
Right.
it.
Kelvin, we are continuing with Kelvin and working, that'll make one of the needs of the social emotional, because it's how we can measure.
Right.
It works in Google Classroom. We can disaggregate that data. We're gonna need to revisit the questions we're asking, because I think the ones asking before maybe aren't as applicable to, so we need to look at the questions offered and
Maybe dig it a little deeper?
yeah,
Yeah.
and maybe, ask the same questions. We were asking 2 sets of questions, and we met with somebody over the summer who actually is about a year or 2 ahead of us in Kelvin, and gave us some recommendations of, yeah, you probably wanna pare that back, you wanna be a little more focused, you wanna start with fewer questions, maybe fewer domains, really align it to what the current climate is. So we got some great, ideas for
Okay.
how to better do that,
Is
and
there-
that'll meet the needs of, or part of what this is asking for.
Are there any questions that we might be able to poke around with just to make sure that home is safe?
Mm-hmm,
Yes.
yeah. And we can always add our own questions. I mean, they have a bank of questions that we can choose from, linked to the various dimensions. But if we have questions that we feel we need to ask for our context, we can add our own questions too.
And in our conversations with, District 16 on the CSBA level, I mean, there's districts that specifically have their counselors, so, I don't know how it works for elementary, their counselors reach out to the students on contacting not only just the academic basis, but so how are things going at home? And they have this counselor has these kids they check on, and these, so are we doing something that's drilling down to that specific kind of manner?
That's, we were doing that with the Kelvin data, where the counselor, our K-8 counselor, had access to all the student comments.
Okay,
And based on the data that they presented and the they were able to,
On
and of
what?
course, very discreetly, you don't call them up and say,
Right.
hey, based on your survey results, we're
Right.
seeing that you're, but, you know, it helps you know who you need to saddle up to and have some conversations with them based on what the data is saying. And so that's another thing, is learning how to be responsive to the data in a
Well, they weren't
delicate
doing
manner.
it, they just did it,
That's, if I could add that in there, some of the sample MOUs that we're using, RTA and ourselves are trying to draft our own MOU. That's a very consistent message, is how we using the non-classroom certificated staff members. And so what we're seeing a lot of those MOUs is really having them, our psychologists, our counselors, reach out specifically to students to see how things are going.
right, not based on their survey result, but
No,
just
but just
based,
in
yeah.
general, reach
Okay,
out.
that's what I
Do
wanna
you
know.
have folks, who would be able to do that, reaching out, who are, non-English, who are non-English speaking, students?
We have our bilingual assistant, our language assistants, we have one at every site.
Okay, so
They
they,
can-
but would they have the skill set to be able to do
Maybe
that
the
kind of work?
translator.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Just for translating, but I
Mainly
mean,
for translating.
as a translator, but in terms of being able to have that communication directly, not so
Not
much?
necessarily, no.
Okay.
It's also not part of their,
It's
Job
not in the
description.
task, it's
Yeah.
part of their
Yeah.
job description. So we have,
They would be on the phone at the same time with the counselor.
yes,
Yes.
They would
yes,
be translating for the counselor, so the counselor would be speaking and they would be speaking.
yes.
Yeah, okay,
we don't have any bilingual counselors,
right.
where the message could go directly from the counselor to the family, which would,
But Care Solis has that ability?
I
Yes.
believe so in every language.
Yeah, okay, so there would be an outlet.
So I'm gonna give you two documents, one is the actual template itself, the draft, the other is a pared down version of the head, the big bold topics, and then the subtopics under that with little descriptors of what exactly that entails, so.
And then I know this will be, I'm not sure where we are in terms of development, but we have some experience well, during the pandemic of.
I think you have this one.
Yeah, that's the one I'm thinking of. Well, I don't know, they may not have that one.
I think they have this. You have this one?
I don't think so.
I didn't send
They
that
don't have
out.
any of these.
No. Anything from Heather, we're gonna have to send you later. I apologize, I didn't do it ahead of time.
So in terms of last year, the end of the school year,
Everything you've done today, I sent to them.
oh, thank you.
Monday is fine.
I have
Sure.
hard copies, but yeah, I didn't.
Yes, they're like
Let's
Monday's
see,
fine.
where did I?
There.
I didn't need to
I'll
put
put it
it
up over, I think I should.
does.
I could put it over. I can just put it over here.
Can you email me?
And Todd, when you're speaking, the board members on Zoom can't hear you. They're asking you to speak louder.
Okay.
How many people
You're
are
soft
actually
spoken,
working?
Mr. Vial.
Martin, how many people are actually still with us? Two. Woo, we got one going still. Friday afternoon.
That
Friday
person gets a star on their chart.
Or a margarita.
So,
All right, so as you review the topics, what I've done is I've created some charts here that have each one of those topics listed. And this certainly will not be an exhaustive, list, but if there are some things that you'd like to have be considered, or suggestions or ideas, then we can chart those here. So the first thing is the stakeholder engagement piece. How will we solicit feedback from stakeholders, including educators, families, students, and other stakeholders who speak a language other than English? And then how does that feedback influence our plan?
So, and please note that our administrators are working on these things with their leadership teams. Because that's the boots on the ground, as you so say. So their feedback, they'll be doing this same process with Heather.
Now, before we get to this, do we need to decide timelines in terms of when we're gonna take this to board and when it's gonna be public hearing? And do we wanna do that later or do that, because we're gonna have to plan our stakeholder meetings
Well,
I
let's,
think,
in a
yeah,
timeline consistent with when the, and enough time to write this at the beginning of the school year,
Knowing that the template's not even.
knowing that the template doesn't
So-
open till August first.
so let's start with the, approval, cause that's
Okay.
after the hearing, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so the approval process, do we wanna do it at a special board meeting, or do we wanna do, or do we wanna move our regular meeting? Is that,
So you have to have a first hearing and a.
right, but what I'm saying is that,
When
so-
do we want the final approval to happen
Right.
before the 30th
What's that?
deadline?
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, so let's start there.
so.
When do we
the-
want the approval to happen?
It's September 30th is on a Tuesday.
September 30th is a Wednesday.
That's when
Wednesday,
That's when I
sorry.
have to make sure it gets to the county office.
Okay.
So do
Or
we wanna,
we have to make
so-
sure it gets to the county office.
so do we wanna do a meeting, however it is, special board meeting on the 24th to approve?
That's what I would recommend.
Okay,
It
so
fits
let's
with our
do,
Thursday
let's
theme.
do that, the 24th of September is
Or not
approval
August, September.
of the continuity and attendance plan, let's not, we'll call it
No, don't
LCAP.
call it that, I don't want to start doing that.
So
Okay.
then I have a question, can, on the 10th, can we keep our regular board meeting and have that be the hearing, or is that too early? Oh, nope, okay, the 17th.
Well, no, I mean,
No, I wanna give you,
That's what we have to do.
okay, so then my recommendation is this, to give
Isn't that
you,
second read? Isn't it hearing, first read, second read? I have
There
it.
isn't,
No.
there isn't a first
No,
read, second read.
Oh,
it's
okay.
like the LCAP. So then I have here's,
But I
hear me
have
out.
to I have to make sure that the
Hearing,
stakeholder groups, the parent, like we
Right.
had the LCAP stakeholder
That's what
meetings, they have to be able to
let's,
review too.
so listen to what I think.
Okay?
The 24th, we do the approval.
Mhm.
How about the 17th, the previous, we do the hearing?
And then also a 10th board meeting?
No,
Oh,
we
you
move
mean
the
move
10th,
the-
we move our September 10th
Mhm.
to the 17th, incorporate the hearing, and then September 24th. Oh, you have your thing! You're messing me up, Jenny, I was on a roll.
But it just has to be approved by the 15th. So you
Shiza.
could go the 15th instead of the 17th.
But I was trying to give her more
Well,
days,
I mean,
Jenny.
that's more days.
That is Monday, yeah.
That's 5 more
Two
days.
Okay, so let's do our board, let's do September 15th for a board meeting.
What day of the week is that?
That's a
That's a Tuesday.
Tuesday.
Mm.
No can do?
Well, no, I just,
What was the problem with the 10th, keeping it the 10th?
Because she needs as many days as possible to
Yeah.
get all these meetings in, so we were trying to give her as many days as possible.
Right,
But Jenny, we have to approve
The elections.
the actuals by the 15th.
so why would moving the board meeting from the 10th to the 17th, a week later, how would that give her more days?
It would give her one more
another
week.
Oh, another week to prepare the plan before board. I see
Yeah,
what you're
because
saying.
she
I
has
thought
more
you
the
said
hearing.
she needed more time between our board meeting and
No,
the
no, no,
before.
no, no, no,
Gotcha.
she needs as
more
many
time to
days
get this,
to get the
to get the work
feedback,
done.
to
Yeah.
revise, to
Yeah.
revise, to
Mhm.
revise, and it's just, it's really hard having, I've only done a microscope of that kind of stuff, and I'm just saying is that that's so much.
What if we,
Well, the good part about this plan is that,
It's fluid.
and one of the opportunities we have
Right.
is that we're being very collaborative. We've already given it out to our leadership teams, and they are gonna be working with their leadership teams to start developing some of the strategies for this. And then we're working with our union on Wednesday, and so some of this will, if it has to be the 10th, then.
No, okay,
no,
now,
why
wait a
don't we
second.
just do 3 weeks in a row? I mean, I know that.
I was gonna just
Yeah,
say
let's
that.
micro,
Well, let's,
attack
how
these.
about, I got a brilliant idea here,
let's hear it.
which gives her
Okay.
even more time.
Okay.
Okay, so do 3 meetings, but do September 29th as the special board meeting for the hearing, and that be the only thing on the agenda. The approval on the 29th, this Tuesday. The 24th be the hearing meeting, and we keep our board meeting on the 10th. And then that gives her what she needs, gives Heather even more time and more days, and we can make sure that we do not put anything else on an agenda, not even closed session, Todd Beal, and then we can rock and roll. What do you think of that?
If we are to do that on the Tuesday one, can we start at 6 instead of 4?
We could do whatever we want with the special board meeting, especially if that's the only thing on the agenda.
I think it's 6.
So we're talking about the September 29th meeting?
September 29th be approval,
Mm-hmm.
the 24th be the hearing,
Mm-hmm.
and the 10th
10th
just
be
be
the
our
regular
regular
board
board
meeting.
meeting. And then that way we get you as many days as possible.
That would be much appreciated.
Look at that, and look at Jenny's like, uh-huh, I
Anybody
got
else
my
have,
thing.
it's nice to have everybody in the room to make sure there aren't any other issues related to, and I'm not aware of any other timelines in terms of they can't, it has to be
You
in a
know what,
special
we're
board meeting or
just-
regular board meeting or, okay.
We're just gonna do, special board meetings are
Okay,
fine.
so approval on the 29th, hearing on the 24th, and then that way the approvals by the PAC meetings and by the stakeholder groups and having it written, and all
Yes.
that can happen
And
prior
any
to that.
revisions that may come up,
And we can revise between here and here if needed,
Exactly.
if something comes up.
you may
in
have to
hearing.
work the weekend, but
That's
there
okay,
you
I've
go.
done that before.
Sorry, is the hearing only the hearing too?
Yes, please.
Yes,
Okay, and then that could also be 6 or
So these are both special board meetings
And that
just
also
for the
be six.
purpose
Yeah.
of this.
So
Okay.
it's
6
29th?
PM on those two,
What?
6 PM on those two.
6 o'clock on both of them?
Yes.
And so with these committee groups, I'm just gonna go back to our earlier discussion where you all signed yourself things.
Yes!
With there not being an LCAP stakeholder meetings this year,
Well,
can they be
that's
this?
not necessarily
no?
the case, because we're gonna be writing the next year's LCAP.
Okay.
Right.
Usually our LCAP meetings
But
start
do
in January.
those same people, can they be on the
They can-
learning continuity?
Ooh, yes.
So I'm gonna
Look at
reach out to
you,
the
you had
LCAP
coffee.
stakeholders team, and I'm gonna start scheduling meetings with that group and other people who may want to
But
participate.
that's a commitment from Cindy and Leslie.
Mhm.
No, the other one was the 22nd.
All right, let's go. We can do
And
it.
usually we would do one a month,
LCAP and L.
from
It's
December
gonna be-
through April or May.
Right.
Now it'll probably one every 2 weeks, or that's
One
where I'll
every
have to
week.
calendar
Let's do
this
it
from
all.
that.
Let's
that-
keep going,
that
one a week.
Calendar, yeah.
And if
I don't know,
Leslie
one a
needs
week, but,
some-
but this helps me know
I
how
can
to
do that,
calendar
too.
these now.
Yeah. Joanne.
Okay.
Okay, so that
That's
was
fine, I'll do that.
and it was the 22nd and the 29th that we were writing?
So Leslie, did you hear that?
24th.
Jordan will fill in for you when you can't make a weekly meeting if these meetings have to become weekly.
Thank you, Jordan.
Of course,
The 24th, Thursday, 29th, Tuesday.
Got it, November 6th.
Yeah,
So the LCAP, this was supposed to be the beginning of a 3-year cycle.
right.
And since that's not the case, we will start, unless something changes again, which, new words pivot, we're learning to all pivot back and forth and all
It's a
around.
dance. It's
Yes,
a
it's a
life
dance. We will still have our regular stakeholder meetings for LCAP starting in January in anticipation of writing the next year's LCAP. So, we'll just be meeting all year long.
This just won't be a fall commitment.
Right, right. Okay. So stakeholder engagement, that really speaks to that piece already in terms of us backwards planning from that, so I think we can go past the stakeholder engagement. In-person instructional offerings, how will the LEA offer classroom-based instruction whenever possible with an emphasis on those with learning loss or at risk for future learning loss?
So I have a question.
Okay?
Because I think it was bandied about, but our special education students, even though we're distance learning, can they come on campus to receive their education in a social distancing manner? Because that is does that make sense?
Not at this point.
They can't come on campus at all?
Not
At all?
It's confusing in the
It is
direction at this
because
point.
this document is saying whenever possible, provide in-person instruction to those students most at risk and which denotes smaller groups.
Right, because.
But yet the guidance that we're hearing from the governor is no in-person instruction based on the, so. and
Those
there-
70% of our special education teachers would like to have
Right.
that exception.
So we're in the
Right.
process of, and we've talked about, English learner small groups coming in perhaps, or
Right.
intervention groups coming in,
Right.
or you know, so
Have we?
we're still exploring those we're trying to get clarification on this waiver that we've heard.
So far, the San Bernardino County Department of Health is not allowing us to do that.
So they can't go on campus.
They have to approve our plan.
Is it that they've not allowed it to happen, or
They
they
have to
something
approve a
official?
plan, and right now, they're not approving any
Any
plans.
plan, so.
Until the criteria for the waivers
Understood.
are decided upon. And what I'm hearing is, part of that waiver will never include secondary, but could include these special groups, such
Yeah,
as
I don't-
special ed.
I mean, how can you provide distance learning to some of these higher needs or more at-risk populations like special ed students? That's a huge,
Right now,
A
they're
tough
not
ask.
giving us any help or criteria.
So we're hoping the guidance, and I say hope isn't a strategy, but we are hoping that the state gives us some guidance with this waiver language in terms of what kind of options do we have. At this point, we're on the monitoring list as a county, therefore we will start off distance learning.
so, but we still have to answer this continuity plan question. When in-person instruction is offered,
Right.
which for us it may never be, who knows? Or won't be the rest of this year, who knows, however it goes. But when that happens, we need to be able to answer in this plan. Here's how we will offer it in person.
If we're allowed to do so.
Correct, okay.
And it might be the hybrid model at
Mhm.
first, a transition plan from distance that, I mean, Fontana literally put up a transition plan. Phase 1 is this, and then we will transition to phase 2, which is hybrid,
Right.
but phase 3 is traditional, they're calling it traditional.
Mhm.
Our leadership teams are looking, to have, when they're coming up with their distance learning plan, I've asked them to have no longer than a 30-minute discussion on the true details of the hybrid plan, because I am assuming with what I hear in all of my meetings, we're gonna have to do that, but right now, the focus is 100%.
Distance learning, right.
Right,
But they're having those discussions, and it is outlined in our strategic plan.
Right,
The
it is.
next thing, once we get this up and running in a breath, will be to outline the hybrid plan, but that is
No, it's,
at least a month away.
but we still have to answer this question.
Yeah.
That's what we're talking about.
And some of these things, I mean, are gonna be answered, I mean, there's so many unknowns right now that there's no way I could come up with some answers. But in terms of it being a collaborative plan that's considered all of
Right.
these features that we're talking about, that, you know, they are giving us until September 30th, really, I mean, or the first part of September to figure this out and to give some definition to the plans we've been working on.
so I have a question going back to the in-person instructional offerings. If we're doing distance learning, if we're testing within the first 3 weeks for that loss of learning, do we have to put in, how are we addressing that learning loss, correct? So if we cannot, I mean, would we then do like the small group tutoring or intervention or whatever, academic intervention for those students? Do we have to write something like that in this plan? As,
I don't know that we have to give that specificity to
Okay,
it. And I
I'm
mean, we
just
can
asking.
still do small group instruction distance-wise. There are breakout sessions that you can do in Zoom.
right,
Or you can,
right,
so I mean, there are ways, even in a distance environment, that we can do some small group
Okay.
instruction
okay,
and some intervention time. And that's all being considered as we build the plans.
okay.
So I'm gonna read the statement and the descriptor, and then as you guys talk, I'm just gonna kind of try to capture some of your statements in terms of what some of the thinking is. So the next one is, stakeholder engagement's a big one, its own little category. In-person instructional offerings, big category. Distance learning program, big category with several subcomponents. First subcomponent being continuity of instruction. How will we provide continuity of instruction for full curriculum access of substantially similar quality regardless of delivery method? What instructional resources will be used to assure continuity if we transition from distance to in-person? That question right there solidifies our need for some sort of instructional framework, curriculum practices, instructional strategies of high yield impact, because those can be done not as effectively in distance, But those same practices can happen in a distance environment as well as an in-person environment. In-person being preferable, obviously.
Okay, so then I have a quick question on this. Are we, not only for distance learning, are we going to be handing out Chromebook where necessary? But do the kids still get their textbooks, that whole handout process? Okay, just
So
asking.
that's one of the things that
That's
we're.
a bridging.
Correct. The administration is also working on a textbook distribution day where
Right.
they will get with their Chromebooks, their other instructional materials.
So that would be continuity of instruction is the textbooks, because we're still going to be teaching, utilizing textbooks or supplemental
Or the digital
materials.
components of those
Right.
textbook adoptions.
Got it. Okay, so we can then.
That's where the training may need to come in terms of the
Yes.
professional development. Is now we're teaching these concepts, but we're teaching them in a digital format. So that's where having embedded PD throughout the course of the year is really important so that we can provide support to our teachers and how to best do that.
But that's, what they're asking for continuity of instruction is actually that if I'm home, back to in person. And I imagine for elementary, oftentimes we keep a lot of the resources, not just the tech and computers, in the classroom, but like in terms of workbooks and texts. I'm sorry. So I imagine there's gonna be a lot of loss, not just of damage to computers, but also, if there's full workbooks that go home with consumables, those aren't gonna be coming back.
Potentially,
Yeah.
that is a probability that we will not be able to recover some of those. Our
So-
hope is that we would,
But there's gonna be a
and there are
logistics-
some resources, I know some fiscal resources that we're getting that are to help facilitate this plan and the losses as a result of COVID.
Because the logistics too, I mean, if the kids take the bus, having all that stuff to then bring back onto campus.
Well, maybe we could just do a day of drop off,
Yeah.
like a reverse.
And that's part of the
Exactly.
transition plan moving, you know,
Yeah,
for
it's
those
just-
are the details we'll have to figure out when we come back.
For that continuity of
Yeah.
instruction.
Yeah, we're not gonna have kids with backpacks with all the instructional materials on the bus coming down with all their, so
So
we'll
my-
figure that out a different way.
Yeah.
So I know this is, so my concern is not only just our special education, EL students, our at-risk Thomas, however you wanna call them, students that do have significant learning loss, that we do have to address in whatever breakout form that we do. The other is the enrichment part, like the gate stuff, that component that's still,
And that was part of the
That
plan,
was
that was on
the
the.
directions they were given, had to
Okay.
include all of those groups.
perfect.
The extracurricular too, such as like debate or Odyssey at the Mind, if any school sites are still
We
doing.
did not include clubs in the plan that's due to me by Friday.
Okay.
Core electives, yeah.
Yeah.
programs. So that's part of what we'll be developing in the plan. The next we've talked a lot about already in terms of the access to devices and connectivity.
Yep.
How will we assure access to devices and connectivity? I think Michelle's already addressed it. Okay, the next piece is the pupil participation and progress. How will we assess progress through live contacts and synchronous instructional minutes? And how will we measure participation and time value of student work?
Yeah, how are ya?
Well, I can't tell you right this moment, that's part of the plan, we
No,
have
I
time
know.
to figure it
I mean,
out.
like, do we literally say this worksheet should take only 15 minutes? This,
Yes.
this task should take 45 minutes, we're literally going to put that kind of value on it, right?
That's
Is that what you're talking
kind
about?
of what they're looking at, wanting us to do is to be able to
Wow, have fun with that, Heather.
quantify.
Yeah, I don't know down to the
All of it.
assignment
But
level,
that
but
would be
here's an instructional
teacher
period of
assignment.
time,
Okay.
right, so the teachers
That
will
would
be.
be district assigned.
Oh, that's part of lesson planning.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, yeah.
And that's
yeah,
kind of
yeah.
what independent study does, is they look at the time value of work in relationship to how does that transfer into instructional minutes in a traditional
Okay.
setting, so, but, so there should be some teaching going on, some work activity going on, some maybe follow-up going, so how are those all
Okay.
time
It is,
bound?
with those time-bound necessities, does it have to be uniform across the district? So that, what's happening in terms of time value at, say, Hoffman in terms
It's
of
the same
similar
as-
No.
activities? Okay, they're not gonna be auditing that,
They
right?
have this time frame, right, of instructional minutes.
Right.
Right.
So that they're accountable to. So now, as a teacher, I'm still accountable to that same instruction I was giving, but now I'm putting time values to what is synchronous and what is asynchronous in my lesson plans.
Okay,
But if there's a worksheet that is being assigned by the second grade in a Hoffman classroom compared to VOE, and one has got a time value of 20 minutes and the other one has a time value of 10 minutes, that's okay.
Yeah, and I don't think it's down to the assignment level.
Okay.
It's more what Michelle was describing broadly.
Okay.
This much, here's an instructional block of time. This much is gonna be direct instruction, this much is going to be independent work practice time.
This much will be assessments.
okay,
Okay.
okay.
Yeah.
Cause I was freaking out
That,
that our
that would
teacher-
be a monumental, yeah,
Yeah,
undertaking.
and then how
Yeah.
do you, who monitors that
Yeah.
and how is that?
And that's where
monitored?
coming together as teacher teams to have that conversation
Okay.
at a grade level will be really important. Then again, the distance learning professional development. So how are we going to provide professional development and resources for staff to support distance learning, including technological support? One thing that I'm really encouraged by is that after the Google Classroom training, we offered the teachers to have the opportunity to apply, to participate in the Leading Edge Black Certification Program, which is a digital certification program that's a year long, supported by the county. So as a part of our systems of support money that we get from the county, they agreed to fund it. And we had 28 teachers sign that for that. We've got 24 of them that started it in July, a few that are starting it in August, and some in September.
Okay.
And some of our principals are participating in that as well.
Yes.
We have somebody from every school site represented, so that gives us a cohort of teachers who can be instructional leaders on their campus. So that's something that's already been launched and is happening as we speak. So just in terms of the professional development piece, having that really be ongoing, and that'll be developed as these plans are developed.
So we had mentioned that, you know, it sounded like there's a lot of resources available outside of our school district as well that are supporting, that can be used to support our teachers here. Are they aware of all of these additional resources, or is there a succinct place where they can say, okay, if I, you know, here's a page of all of the resources, here's all the county ones, I click the link, go over there, here's, you know, some from,
Well, this is one of the things we did last year when we had the campus closures, is our TOSAs were facilitated because we were feeling like we were all being inundated with all these wonderful resources and professional development opportunities.
we
and
were
it was
too.
a little bit
Yeah.
overwhelming, to be
Yeah.
honest with you.
definitely.
So our TOSAs were coming together every Friday, and they were we were forwarding them all to them. They were combing through them, and then they were organizing them by secondary, elementary, and social emotional.
Great.
They were
Sending
kind of vetting them.
Yeah,
Right.
kind of vetting them, knowing where we are in our needs, and then sending them out as here's, sort of like a Monday PD blast. So they
Right.
knew every Monday this PD blast was gonna go out, here are some resources to support you throughout the week that you can choose from, and it was maybe 4 or 5, rather than, 50 that you're
Listen
getting
to all
throughout the
your
course of the
vendor
year. So I'm
emails.
thinking that seemed to
And
be well
webinars.
received.
Right.
So utilizing a system, something like that, if we're still distance learning as we develop the plans, where the TOSAs can support that professional development weekly in terms of here are some resources to use at your discretion based on your need and where you are.
So,
Okay, staff roles and responsibilities, and this I know we're in the process of doing kind of with the personnel department, with describe what are some new roles and responsibilities of affected staff as a result of COVID-19. We have some people who are going to be working probably out of their normal class description because of our needs. And the job that they are doing is no longer functional in a distance learning environment, so.
And we're seeing that there's some communications right now between the district and CSEA and how that may work out for this upcoming year, especially with distance learning. So that MOU's getting finalized. We're reviewing it as a management staff on Monday, and we'll meet again with CSEA next week to hopefully finalize that MOU and what that'll look like.
I don't know if our online people have any, they'll jump in, I guess, if they have a, okay. Feels weird to have 2 people in supports for pupils with unique needs. So describe the supports that the LEA will provide to English learners, pupils with special needs, foster, and homeless pupils.
Okay, so we're in distance learning and we have some of our special education students that need some in-person services that, you know, you know what I'm saying, support services for whatever their disability and whatever's in the IEP. If we are basically confined to distance learning, how do we meet the needs of the IEPs? I mean, I know Derek's not here, but I'm worried about that component of making sure that we're addressing what's in that IEP.
And that's where a lot of the issues are coming in, and what we're having to probably do is create addendums for each of the IEPs and make changes on a temporary basis, what distance learning is gonna look like and how it's gonna affect their minutes and services.
So they may be the group that is the exception to every
Exactly.
student in Google Classroom.
Okay,
So like, I know that like at the high school, Carla had to create very specific, and I think so did Joe, very specific, lessons that had to be picked up because of the disabilities of the students versus Google Classroom. So those things would be, you know, something that would be worked out in that IEP process.
but if we get the clarification, and if we can safely
Bring them.
bring
we
them
will
back
them.
and do ELD,
Derek has already written a plan with the
Awesome.
special ed teachers on how to
Awesome.
do that.
Okay.
He shared it at cabinet this week, that
Yeah,
it's in a
he's
draft
meeting-
format.
He's meeting with his teachers on Monday.
Yes, he's
Okay.
meeting with the teachers on Monday.
so if we can't, because I don't know, I mean, that just worries me to no end that those children, because we have no idea how long we're going to be in distance learning, and to almost like punish them is not okay, is not fair. And not just special ed, but also our EL students, because one of my concerns is that I know that the ELD program is there to support and get our kids reclassified, but so many of the kids are in the ELD more than 5 years, and then when they get to the high school level, middle school and high school level, it affects their abilities to take electives and to meet the A through G requirements. Well, if we can't service them as well as we could, I mean, you can do Zoom, but you know what I'm saying,
Right.
is that they're being punished more and more and more, and it just makes me crazy.
Yeah, and our EL coordinators, we go to a meeting monthly, where they give us recommendations and suggestions from
Right.
across the county that we can bring back to the sites to give ideas of how to best serve the
The
students
EL
in this
students.
environment. Yeah.
Okay.
And SELPA is also guiding districts and
On
helping
special
superintendents
education.
and directors of special ed and helping with the support plan.
And I know they're working at the state level in terms of special education and meeting the needs of special education kids. It's just that there's not, we're
There needs to be
starting
more
in
urgency.
3-4 weeks, and
Yeah.
when are you going to make
I think,
these decisions?
yeah, there needs to be more urgency for, you
Yeah.
know, it's great to see all of these things coming out at the state level about, you know, servicing your at-promise and your other underserved student populations, but there's no supports that have gone along with it, no clarifications. I mean, how are other districts doing it? We're all just sitting here waiting until they tell us, okay, in San Bernardino County, for your EL students, you can have small gatherings, maybe at each school site, or whatever. It's impossible for us to plan if we don't know what they will or won't allow. Maybe it's only one school site that you can have it at. Maybe it's none. And it's just,
It's
I share your
almost 80
frustration,
here.
Cindy.
Oh, is that why? Okay,
It's
so
almost 80
It's not
here.
just me, it's not my,
You were having hot flash?
well, I never know, it could be at a weird point in my life.
I tried to, it said it's
I just know I need a fan right
67,
now,
but
that's
it's not
all.
coming on.
Okay, so
I-
one more
I-
question on
I-
special ed.
Okay.
Sorry, I know I'm
I-
harping on this, but Todd, maybe since Derek's not here, you and Michelle can, the special education, I know that you talked about the accommodation amendment, the amendment. in terms of minutes and stuff like that, but at some point, do we go back and sort of like catch up for the loss, like the loss of learning, loss of service, or is that,
No, I mean, it's
So
something
it
we have
depends
to.
on the IEP.
Yeah,
It's
it
really
depends on the addendum,
individual.
and it's gonna depend on, probably the services that are supposed to be rendered. I mean, we have like our extended school year, that we provide, that we must provide to a certain
Right.
group of students. Depending how this year goes and how long this takes place, that might be an option for us to open up to more students
Okay.
if we have to.
okay,
So, it doesn't mean it's out the window, but those are things we can consider as we go along the way.
okay,
Well, over the summer, we did also provide some compensatory education.
Yeah.
right, yeah.
Classes for some of our students to
Okay.
get caught up over the summer, so we did provide some of
Okay,
that
so we're
already.
trying, we're
Yes.
gonna do the best we can per the IEP and what the state allows us to be able to do at any specific time.
And for those families that wanted to register for home choice, that program, our new coordinator, we did have several special ed families who want to do that option, but they cannot do that option unless it's part of their IEP. That that it would be agreed upon as a parent, because home choice is really the parent is the teacher.
Right.
So that would have to be a part of the IEP, and Mr. Nygren is working with Mr. Slim to conduct IEP meetings for those requests, but depending on that individual student, I don't know if they will be accepted into the independent home choice program because of their needs.
Well, I think
So-
go ahead, Dan, you can wait.
Just as far as students with unique needs, there are a lot of families that seem to be moving up on the mountain. I know of one foster child in particular who is high school age that does not know any other kids on the mountain. And so in terms of not having that community and not having those connections and socio, SELs, are there any steps that we're taking in order to be able to help those, like the homeless and foster youth, being able to, especially if they're new onto the mountain?
Social
Yeah.
connections with their peers.
But normally they would get those connections with their peers through being on site.
Right,
I guess-
I know one in particular, like I said, this one in particular was interested in cross country, but right now with CIF being, paused until, December, there is a real
Yeah.
lack of connectivity there.
so are we talking about how do we electronically connect students so that I mean, yes, they're on their devices on Facebook and all that, but I'm intentional, trying to recreate in some manner the social interconnection and networking that occurs naturally when they are on campus. How do we replicate that so that kids, if they want to formulate study groups, oh, look at, hey, you want to da-da-da-da, or if we're not, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, that was what I was trying to get at, in terms of even sooner rather than later. It doesn't just have to be study groups, it would be some of those extracurriculars that these students would
Clubs.
normally get involved in that are not now going to necessarily be available, giving them a way of being able to feel connected and get some true relationship opportunities for them.
I feel like our ASB kids may be reaching out.
I know
And
that
we also have, we have what the sites are preparing for the strategic plan now, but then we also gave them a list of long-term planning. Like, there's an immediate need to get something out in the next 2 weeks, but there are needs that need to be addressed in the next month and a half.
Like, how can
And so
they,
they have that on their list. It won't be addressed in the strategic plan by the first week of August.
So
But
like-
it is on their radar as a long-term, when we know how.
right,
Yeah.
like how can we, like NHS at the high school, can NHS still connect and do their thing? Can someone do the cancer awareness club? Can someone do, how can we still,
Or possibly even cross-country, they don't need to train together, but setting up some sort of a.
meet on this
community
trail
board
and we
to-
will socially distance together?
Or being able to go and do their independent, just having ways for them to be able to have a forum to connect.
I guess, one other question would be, just as there's some monetary compensation that's tied to closing the digital divide in our district, is there anything monetary-wise to address pupils with unique needs.
As far as special education goes, it's not earmarked for that.
Okay, so,
But it doesn't mean that it can't be. We have a set of funds that we are meeting with management, as I think I put this in an update. We are meeting with management next week to see about those budget expenditures and what can and cannot be.
so the state hasn't allocated anything to address these,
Specifically,
these
no.
student cohorts.
It's more, if it's an allocation factor, not necessarily a requirement to spend in each of those
Right.
categories.
It's like LCFF financing. Okay.
Okay,
Right,
I
Heather,
know
keep
we
going,
have, what,
20 minutes.
20 minutes,
And
so,
we have some other
just
things.
real quick, going back to continuity of instruction, I failed to mention that we are using Google Classroom across the entire district as our platform, and with an opportunity to use Zoom as well for a in-person, because that does provide for breakout sessions where the Google Hangouts does not as much. So, but we are being unified in terms of that continuity across using that same platform.
Thank you, that's a question I didn't know that I needed to ask. but
Okay,
I've seen
so
a
I
lot
thought,
of-
I meant to mention that
Yeah.
we're in continuity of learning, because that does help us have some continuity in terms of the platform that we're utilizing.
I've seen a lot of districts that have been constraining their staff to just one platform. You can
Yeah.
only use Google Classroom and Google Meets and Google Hangouts.
Yep.
And that is obviously, I'm sure, limiting for teachers, so I'm glad that we'll allow them to use both.
Yeah, they can use both.
Perfect.
And we're shifting all of our email to Gmail, because there were some glitches with the teachers being able to communicate with their students with Outlook and Gmail, not being able to have Gmail with their kids, so.
Well, thanks to Mark,
we're-
thank you, Mark, for
Yeah,
that.
that was a big undertaking,
Well, it
so.
still is, isn't it?
Still going.
It's
Yeah,
still going,
there you
but
go.
it's so far so good. I've been using Google all week and it's going quite well, so.
Good.
All right, pupil learning loss. How will we assess for and address learning loss for 2019-20 and 2021 years, particularly looking at ELA, ELD, and math? Those are the three core subjects that they're particularly wanting us to focus on.
Math.
And then what strategies will address learning loss and accelerated learning progress? I think you were kind of speaking to this as needed, including how these strategies differ for EL, low income, special needs pupils with exceptional needs, foster and homeless. So what are we going to be doing to address the learning loss collectively as well as specifically? And Michelle has asked for those kinds of strategies to be included in the plan that our principals are putting together and will be sharing with us, I think, next Friday or,
Right, right.
yeah.
Okay.
Effectiveness of the implementation pupil learning loss strategies. I know this is your area, Cindy. How will the effectiveness of the services provided to address learning loss be measured? So that has to be part of our plan, is, in the absence of CAS and some of these other state mandated assessments, what are we locally going to be using to assess whether the strategies that we're using are effective or not? So that will be part of our plan, working with our teacher teams.
Because, yes, I know that the pandemic and the different learning module that we have to use, which is distance learning right now, possibly hybrid in the future, we don't know when we're gonna go back to traditional, but we can't lose sight of what we were working on prior, which is that we were really for me, you know, EL was one of them, so I'm glad that EL is all over the place here. But also like math, collectively through the district, we seem to be struggling, I mean, not to exclude ELA, but when you have, what my concern is, I guess, and it is especially concerning if we're using distance learning, is that the UC system is getting rid of the SAT, ACT. They're having a whole conversation about admission requirements, and one of the things that you see in some of the articles of discussion is possibly, they haven't made a decision, this is years away, possibly using that SBAC test. Well, if that is true, if it comes to fruition as one component of admissions, that you have had to meet or exceed standards at Rim High, math was 15.9 something percent, so that means only 15.9% of our students can actually qualify to get into a UC, because you're assuming that they also met and exceeded standard on ELA. That's concerning to me, in the framework of the change of conversation happening at the college level. I mean, that means that we need to step up our game because we have no flippin' idea what's coming down the pike. We know that AP scores will still be part of the conversation. We know that their GPA, we know that part of it will still be part of the admissions process. But we have no idea if they're going to make their own test, if they're going to have the SBAC test. So, I mean, talk about long-range goal and still, you know, like Natalie's saying, we're being reactive right now to everything that's happening now, but we can't lose sight of the long vision of college and career ready. And unfortunately, in the midst of all this, the colleges are having that debate within themselves, and it's like,
Which is why we've gone to implementing the IABs rather than the checkpoints that were created.
Right.
We're using the IABs, and the plan for this year was to use the ICA, which is the interim
Right,
comprehensive
right.
assessment that really mirrors the SBAC in 9th grade and 10th grade.
right,
So when the 11th graders are
And
taking
they're-
the CAS, so we had grandiose plans that this was going to be the
and
first
it may
year for
happen
that
in next year.
implementation, although we can still use the IABs and the FIDs and the
Right.
ICAs regardless of the fact that CAS has been suspended. So we're going to continue to utilize those resources, and now there's a new platform called Tools for Teachers, which provides instructional resources for teachers for the results that they get from their kids' IABs. Here are some instructional materials if your kid scored in the yellow, red, or green. Here are some strategies that you can teach aligned to the standards and your SBAC results.
Right.
So truly guiding instruction.
Right, because our 9th and 10th graders still can take the ICA. And then next year, when we get to the 11th grade and we're back hopefully to normalcy, and the UCs have figured out what they're gonna do, and Cal State is having a conversation too, you just go, okay, we are being proactive, we are making sure that our kids are able to be, we're flexible, and we have kept our eyes on the long run so that we are not screwing our kids over when they become seniors and the UC and Cal State finally have made decisions.
So one of the things that we're looking at is how do we use those IABs and ICAs for this assessment of learning loss?
Okay,
And then using those as a benchmark throughout the
Throughout
course of
the
the
year.
year, because they've
Perfect.
now opened it up so that they can be administered at home.
But I would also, I mean, that's with the learning loss, I think you're also addressing the goals.
continuing, well, it's that we don't know when if we're gonna take the SBAC this year or not. But in terms of long distance, making sure that we do not take our eye off of,
I understand what you're saying, the different interim assessments that you're discussing. One of them, I think it was the IAB that I saw in the 5th grade classroom this year for math, was, so the questions in there were related to taking, exponents with using the zero power. And we talked about doing non-negotiables, looking at 5th grade and talking about, taking values to the zero power and having that as being something that would be on an interim assessment. I don't know about the wisdom of that, and I'm wondering whether we should be putting together, taking a look at those benchmarks, really focusing in on those critical learnings, especially for math, to make sure that we're focusing our
Gotcha.
efforts so that we're looking at prerequisite material and prioritizing that, because if that's, I know that teacher that I was speaking with was really grappling with it in that her students really didn't understand it, but it's such a abstract concept that it's more of an 11th grade concept, not a 5th grade concept. So if we're
and
gonna
is
really
it on the
focus.
test? Is it on the SBAC test for 5th
But
grade?
if it's, even, it isn't gonna be foundational, that would be more of
Now,
a,
in response quickly to
Yeah.
what you're saying is, we actually partner with Renaissance Learning, with this Accelerated Reader, which is our Star Reading and Star Math. They have created something called a Focus Skills, which I'm gonna be sharing with our principals and our TOSAs to share with teachers. But it does exactly that, because that's what they're talking about, is that with this learning loss piece, we're gonna have to prioritize what we teach.
Yes.
We can't teach everything, and we can't close every gap that's going to be there.
And that
So
doesn't
what are
necessarily
those
draft,
essential learnings
yeah.
that they have to know? And so they've actually they've worked with people from all across the whole country and researchers, and they've come down to, it's really a cool website, I'll be happy to sit down and show it to you.
Yes.
It shows what are those skills at that grade level, which ones are the most essential
Right.
for foundational learning to move
To
them on
build
to the
upon,
next skill.
right.
And so the teachers could use that tool as they plan to say, okay, here's 6 standards, we're gonna teach these 3 are fundamental and foundational. We're gonna touch on these, but we're gonna really drill down on these.
That needs to
So
happen,
it's a
too.
great tool, I learned about it over the summer, I think it'll be very useful and helpful to do exactly what you're talking about. It'll take time for teachers to kind of learn how to use it, but it's free, they've opened it up to the public, so anybody can go on and look at it. But I agree with what you're saying, and we have some tools available to us to help us with that.
Now, I agree that we need to prioritize definitely, you know, because we can't teach everything to the same
Correct.
degree that we
Well,
want to.
In a limited.
Is there anywhere where we're kind of earmarking what we're setting aside as lower priority, like raising to the 0th power, you know? Those 5th grade students still have 7 more years in public education. They're gonna have to return to that concept at some point.
Oh, Heather, hold this, wait, jump in, Heather, cause you have
So,
something.
Yeah.
in my
Hold on.
thinking, that is the power of the PLC.
Okay.
Is you have teacher teams that come together in chunks of time, and they say, okay, let's look at these focus skills, and over the next 6 weeks, what are the ones that we are gonna agree upon that need to be fundamental collectively?
Mhm.
These are where we want them to end, how are we gonna know that they learned it? There's our PLC questions, and what instructional materials and resources are we gonna collectively use to get them there?
When it comes to math, there's 2 different things that come to mind, especially involving the teachers. One is having that vertical articulation and being able to do that backward mapping in terms of coming up with our ideal, in terms of math. What do we want in math for our graduates, and backward math, and make sure that we have critical learnings at each level. That doesn't mean that's all they're gonna learn.
Right, but those,
But then also making sure that we have some sort of an independent way of assessing. Because one of the things I saw when I was in the classroom, and I've seen as a parent with my offspring and their friends talking about it, is the lack of academic integrity that might be happening, and that work is being done without the learning happening. And it happens, and we're not catching it until 11th grade or so, you can't fill those gaps. So making sure that there is a true understanding, if there are students who just don't test well, making sure they don't just test well, that the knowledge is still there,
Right.
hitting them where they're at, and making sure that they have those foundational skills, rather than them demonstrating it somehow, but not really understanding it. It may not be them demonstrating it. So,
But and then I do love the use of the IB and the ICA because it's practice,
Yes.
because at the high school students say,
we've
if
never
I'm
seen
just
this
seeing
before.
this in 11th grade,
Right.
because I haven't seen it in 9th grade or 10th grade, and now I'm getting hit with this.
And it is
I'm
aligned
just
to the
gonna
SBAC,
doodle.
which is aligned to the standards.
There
And
you
in
go.
some cases, we're finding that the standards, as people are delving into the standards more, the standards are more rigorous than than the 97 standards were. In terms
And
of
it-
where we see exposure to different principles and concepts is earlier than it was with the 97 standards.
And I guess that is my concern, is making sure we do this work now and be proactive in doing this work now, not just for math, but, for English as well, because if, and this is a big if, that is a choice to be used as an admissions part of admissions, we need to make sure that we're doing that better than 15.9% at the high school level.
And I'm looking at our clock, and we could talk about this all day long probably, because it's
Actually,
it's a
yeah.
huge topic, and yeah, and I don't disagree with you. So the next section is our mental health and social emotional, which is how will the LEA monitor and support social emotional well-being of pupils and staff, and what PD and resources will be provided to address trauma and other impacts of COVID. So we've touched already on our Kelvin, using that as a resource, our counselors, using them as somebody to help reach out to those families, our surveys, those kinds of things. So
You talked about Care Solace.
Care Solace, yes.
But one other question would be, what about our local counseling
Yeah.
partners? How are they
Mountain
doing right now?
Counseling,
Not sure.
and Family Services, I know we've partnered with them
Those,
before.
those, MOUs and things are still in place.
Okay, I'm wondering what they're doing right now to kind of adapt to the to the new world that we are in?
Virtual.
Question.
Virtual, yeah.
Everyone's doing telehealth now. I
There
mean,
you go.
even the local ones, so
Okay.
they do have that.
Telehealth,
Yes.
Pupil engagement and outreach, what strategies will be implemented for re-engagement of students absent from distance learning? What outreach will be provided to pupils and families, including in languages other than English, particularly when they are not meeting compulsory education requirements? So our SARBs,
We have our new family engagement position.
yes, we have a new position now, well, it's a, using our Title III resources, in my department, Veronica Palaio is, part of her day is gonna be dedicated to parent and family engagement, particularly focused on our English learner families.
Ooh,
And she has a
yay.
background in that, and she has a lot of compassion and is very, has a good way of building relationships with our English learner families.
Oh.
So,
Gee.
I'm encouraged about that, I'm meeting with her next week to start some planning, so.
Wow.
So that's that.
School nutrition.
That's a
School
big one.
nutrition.
Yeah.
We're almost
Back
there.
to delivery.
How will
I think
meals
so.
be provided to pupils participating in free reduced lunch programs for both in-person and distance learning? So much like we did last year, where we were providing meals on a certain, those schedules haven't been created yet, but I know that will be part of our plan, the distribution of food to those families, which seemed to go well last year, was well received. I know you guys were, some of you
Okay,
were
so-
part of that.
So part of my question would be, is that we provided food for any family that showed up, irregardless of whether they were on free and reduced lunch, would we still be offering that same
At this time, those guidelines have not been,
issue?
issued or changed, so it would have to be students with, that belong to RIM.
And they
Any
would
student.
have to,
And they would, yeah, go ahead.
they would have to qualify, and they would have to,
Show a card or something?
Yes, signing with their number.
yeah, they would have to, be actually in our program.
Okay,
Okay.
Unless
so it's
something-
changed.
That is
It's
good.
back to how it is when school was,
Okay.
open.
Okay,
Okay.
Thank
'Cause
you.
the-
They are expecting the federal government to perhaps release some of those guidelines so that we can feed whoever needs to be fed.
Okay.
but we
But
haven't.
right now, they are not releasing, so it would be just like they're at school, I have to sign in with my number, and that's the
Okay.
only way to get food.
Okay,
Because the pandemic, or end of last school year, it was any household as long as they had one student in
Right,
the
it,
district, right?
from 2 to 18,
2 to 18.
and that would,
okay, yeah.
that's not the case anymore.
Okay, got it. But it would still be presumably something like a 1-day-a-week distribution.
We
I
don't
think
know
part of that,
that.
if I could add that in, it'll be
Yeah.
part of the discussion as we go through, as part of Monday's discussion regarding CSEA's MOU. They actually had some pretty good ideas, when we met with them, this week. And so we're gonna meet, as part of our group, we'll have our transportation, our CNS management, things like that, because some of the things they added in there is, could we have a CNS worker on a bus who then transports food, to certain drop-off locations. So they had different ideas, and so we're gonna address that with our management staff on Monday and see what else we can come with and how that fits in with current guidelines or possibly upcoming guidelines.
Cool. All right. That would be interesting.
And then the last component of this is the same as at LCAP, where we have to show that we are increasing or improving services for foster youth, ELs, and low-income students. So how are our funds being used to improve the services to these student groups, and how were their needs considered first? How do the actions provided meet the goals for these students? So that's a dollar amount, I think, that we have to be able to verify in terms of our, like we do in the LCAP, and then how are we improving services for those students, which a lot of that will be defined in the work that we do in the other components.
Okay, so one thing, I just wanna give a shout out to, since we did it already, to Tori, is that in terms of access to advanced placement courses, we've had this discussion because we have 35 spots in English Lit, AP English Lit. So placement exam, teacher recommendation, here's the rankings, are you on the list, right? And then you get that spot, but it leaves off, and when you look at the AP enrollment, this group, and then their continuing participation in AP, you see the numbers drop significantly in some of these groups, and Tori has changed it to, if you wanna take an AP course, you get to take an AP course. You know, we're gonna let people take the AP course, and I know there's two philosophies, one, that we shouldn't do that because, you know, there's standards, but the kids have to still meet those standards,
Right.
and irregardless
They
of,
wanna give it a go?
and irregardless if they take the test or not, because they may want those challenging courses and still go to a community college where it doesn't matter if you have an AP score, or go to Ivy League and they don't take the AP scores either, but it's just the fact that that barrier to access is actually being taken down, which I think it doesn't take any money, it's just instead of maybe one section of AP English Lit, you convert a regular to an AP. And I just think that is a way to think, how can we take down these barriers, then some of them are easy without money.
And so that's
If
why
we're
they,
willing-
yeah,
if we're
increase
willing
or
to take
improve,
that
so that
risk.
would be an improved service where we're getting more
Right.
access based on a program we already have that doesn't cost.
And it's taking, and yes, maybe it's a risk, and maybe, but we're doing it to see how, and giving this a go. Now the challenge is supporting, giving that academic support, extra tutoring or whatever, but I'm just saying is that I love how that is now a barrier that's been dropped for those, because traditionally, if you look at our AP enrollment, those are the
Okay.
students that are having that barrier and they then drop.
258.
Does anybody have anything they wanna, I mean, whether it's pertaining to this particularly or like the conversation we would have had pre-COVID, pre-closure? I mean, I talked about math, we've talked about mental health.
Talked about EL.
We talked about, yes, to the nth degree in special education.
A lot of our questions were just.
We've touched on academic
We have
integrity.
touched on it, I think it would be nice to be able to come back to that, maybe not today, but in terms of establishing some board goals and, and direction and outreach, it may not be able to fit the LCAP requirements right now in terms of our direction, but I think it is a conversation worth having.
Did I share with you the compilation of the LCAP stakeholders' input from last school year? Because we were supposed to have that conversation, and then, did I already give you that
You
list?
gave us it, but
Okay.
I left it at home.
Okay, well, because I did bring that
Oh.
today in the event that, just because this gives you the compilation of all the stakeholder meetings that we held last year, review of the data, they pulled out those areas that they believe show the greatest need, and then some ideas of what to do. So I'll give you this again as a sort of a reminder of that conversation, as we look at going back to LCAP in the future.
And
Leslie and Natalie, do you have anything to add, or?
And one thing for me personally, always, because it is part of our college and career indicator, is the A through G completion rate. Our CTE completion rate is anywhere from 93% to 98%, but our A through G completion, it flexes anywhere from 31% last year, I think the previous year was 40%. But it's like, if we're doing that well, I know it's 2 years is a completer for ROPCTE, and I know that the site is working on those electives and those ROP courses that currently aren't A through G approved, getting them so it's easier to meet the A through G requirements. But, I think that we should be looking at, especially for our Hispanic students, is that we should be higher than that. We should be 50, 60, 70%. If we can do that 2-year thing at 98%, we should be able to do a 4-year meeting of requirements. You know what I'm saying? It just, and I know our counselors have a really great plan together, to attack that. So I'm hoping that the distance learning doesn't impede their plan to really touch every single student every single year to make sure that they're on track. They don't have to go to college.
But it gives them the opportunity.
Yes, not just their diploma to go into, because the other concern last time,
Opening out to choice.
yeah, because community college is great, it's a cheap, very, very inexpensive way to go, but the dropout rate for community college in San Bernardino is always in the 60 percentile, you know, and you just go, how is that yet another barrier that we are setting up for our kids to make it harder for them to get a bachelor's degree if they desire to get a bachelor's degree? Are we making it harder for them to attain that goal because they didn't meet the A through G requirements? And I went to an ELAC meeting where some of the parents didn't want their children in ELD because they wanted them in AVID, they wanted them in to be able to go to college and have that college, and they felt like ELD was the barrier to their kids having those opportunities. They feel like it was an impediment. And so I just really feel that a focus, if our OPCT can have that kind of success, so can we in the A through G requirements. And I really do like the counselor plan of like focusing every year to be able to hit those kids every single year to keep them on task. And no, I don't believe every kid should go to college. Some kids really do they've wanted to be a pilot since they were a little kid. Go to pilot school, you know? But
Something post-secondary.
But
Whether
if we take that off the table by the time they're in 10th grade, then we've done them a disservice and in 12th grade in terms of their options they can pursue. And then we've created those barriers for them. And if we're really truly doing this, A through G and CTE has to really be part of that conversation. The completion rates. Although Steph does a good job, so I don't know what to say.
Okay. I think we'll go ahead and wrap up our day here then, won't we? Thank you, Heather, very much for
Yes.
that,
So there you
yeah,
go.
leading the
Everything
longest
you wanted to know
section.
about the learning continuity and attendance plan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
I'm
Call it
kidding,
that.
I'm kidding.
Okay,
Strike that from your vocabulary until December.
we'll move on to 4.0, adjournment.
I make a motion to adjourn the meeting at, hold on, 3:04.
I second.